Sanders with a lot of time. Throws it out to the right side, has a completed pass to Travis Hunter, and Hunter's still on his feet, dancing around, making a gain of 17.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
Jones throws. He's got his receiver open. Badger spins, and Badger stayed on his feet and got the first down.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Delora, deep down the middle. Got his man. Cowing. Touchdown, Arizona.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Penix looks to the end zone, and it's caught. Odunze, spectacular catch.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Quarterback keeper, rising with a seam. He's into the red zone. He's inside the 10.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Nix, pump fake, takes off. Into the clear. Bo Nix. There he goes. He won't be caught. He's done it again.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go today on this Tuesday afternoon. It's August the 8th. Hope you've done all of what you needed to get done today, and hopefully you spend a little time with us the next 3 hours. We appreciate your time. We will hear from John Wilner from the Pac-12 hotline, also covers from the San Jose Mercury News, Cal and Stanford. We had John on back right after the USC and UCLA story popped, and then a couple of times since that time. And he's written an article, 5-Step Guide to Rebuilding the Conference Around the 4 Schools Left Behind. We'll get with him on that. He goes back to 1959, the year I was born, is when they had the conference collapse. And it became eventually what was the Pacific Coast Conference. And then now, of course, what is the Pac-12, Pac-4. And John will join us today at 3:40 to discuss that with us. Also, one of the things he mentions is Bob Thompson is who the Pac-12 should contact and look at as an interim commissioner, depending on what happens with George Kliavkoff, Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak. I'm David Smoak, and he will join us, Bob Thompson, today at 4:05. And I'm not so sure Bob wasn't, at least he's an Oregon alum, maybe discussing things with them. But that's pretty interesting that he was brought up in this article.
Yeah, I think he'd do a good job as interim commissioner and trying to navigate them to it if there's anything to be interim commissioner of. I mean, I think that's what remains to be seen. And if I'm Bob or anybody, I don't know if I'm going to interview for that job if I don't know really what the end game is, because now they're at a problematic thing. You hear them. One of the things is, well, they can add 8 teams and get back to 12 or whatever. They can go to the AAC in the Mountain West. Well, are they gonna pay all those exit fees? Which now they're in not even a position to offer such a thing, and they've got debts and other things they've got to figure. There's so many other just spider web of badness when it comes to what's left of the pack that I think that I don't see how it moves forward as a conference anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I look forward to hearing from John and hearing what he has to say. To suggest Bob is an interesting take, and we'll hear more on why he chose that route to potentially go. But that's a nice compliment to Bob Thompson, and look forward to hearing from him as well. So both should be great to provide some interesting insight. John, from the full Pac-12 perspective of how everything's gone, he was certainly one of those that was out there being told at the very least, hey, deal's coming. It's going to be better. He wasn't the one saying layup and things like that, but, it seemed like he was getting the same type of information that most people on the West Coast were getting with just, everything's fine. All this fire that you're hearing about, it's totally made up. It's total propaganda. And, then the very interesting sequence of events, whatever actually took place last week that led to, the rest of the three corners leaving. I see all this debate on like what actually happened. Like I'm sure y'all seen that, right? Of like, did Arizona decide to leave first? Or did Oregon? Like what pushed what button and what pushed or pulled the lever that left everybody going in different directions. But regardless, it's very interesting these last couple of weeks. I'm sure from his perspective and. Bob obviously has seen some things like this, but this was very unique in its own right. So that'll be good. And yeah, there's a lot of questions still out there. I mean, I've seen just today alone, there was the trying to pull together of 4 different conferences to create a mutant conference that would be a Power 5-ish conference. And there's the question, I saw the tweet on the way over here of, there's, how long is this going to be the 4, or is it going to be a 5, or is it going to be a 2? And like, what's kind of the timeline there? So yeah, there's still a lot to unpack from all this.
All right, and we will. And again, those are 2 guests that we'll have right off the top. 3:40 and 4. Phil Bennett, former long time. He was the head coach at SMU, assistant coach at Baylor, defensive coordinator at Arizona State. His thoughts about the way things are going with college football. Craig will have off the radar. Baylor AD Mack Rhoades today at just after 5, and then John McLean, Hall of Famer, and Paul Catalina's top 5. So this is from the Sports Business Journal. This is part of their story as they kind of unwrapped what's happened. ESPN, Fox, and CBS all put in late or last-minute bids for packages for the Pac-12 games. But the bids all came in way lower than the conference wanted. How low? Commissioner Kliavkoff only presented the conference presidents with the Apple TV's bids last week, never brought that up apparently, or at least appears he did not at least put it on the table. Fox's bid was for a package of 13 games, for which would pay about $35 to $40 million per year, which would have been $3.5 or $4 million, depending on how many teams are left. Fox's bid essentially was what was considered part of the conference's B package, and there's more to that as well, but Bob Thompson said this, Jim Williams said this, Patrick Craik said this, that there would probably be someone linear that would come in, but the problem is they're going to come in, they're not going to bid against themselves, they were going to come in lowball because they could. And so apparently they all came in with something, but not much at all was on the meat on the bone.
That's pretty comparable to the CW ACC package, $35 million for 13, 1 game a week. And that wasn't going to get it done. They wanted the whole encompassing Power 5 package, and I'm sure that I would really like to know the logic in not taking all this stuff to the commissioners, although ESPN made them an offer a year ago, which they said no and rejected and took it to market, and that was the biggest mistake that they made. Obviously, they should have just taken that and run with it, because once they turned it down, then the sequence of events, came to pass.
Yeah, I mean, if you were hoping that everything stood together, if you're Oregon and Washington, I think you're pretty happy with the way things went, actually, because it got you where you wanted to be. But yeah, you're right. Like, they should have just taken what they had when they had it if everybody wanted it to remain as it was. I mean, that at least partially explains the whole, there's new people at the table, that you started to hear there towards the end. And there's new, however that was phrased by a few people of, there's new suitors at the table or whatever. And, certainly didn't feel like that from the outside. It felt like they were getting close to the end and things weren't lining up the way that they needed to be lining up. But then you hear, there's new people at the table. You're like, who is that? Like, could somebody be coming out of left field? And there was the whole CW thing. It's like, oh, man, is the CW going to be the one? They come and gobble up a lot of the games for the Pac. But no, a bunch of people were interested, obviously, so that was true, but just not to the level as well of making a difference. So, when you're at in a position of weakness like they were, I mean, who's going to come in and save the day? I saw that a lot over the course of this entire story of like, well, what if Apple just spends like $1 billion? And it's like, but why? Why would they do that? Well, they've got lots of money. Well, you don't stay rich by just burning money. Like it's like a compost or something. Like you're smart with your money. So there was this like Superman idea that somebody was going to swoop in with a big network logo on their chest and just give you this huge bounty for no reason other than just the kindness of their heart. And that never made sense. And so, yeah, they had lots of interest apparently, just none of it was major interest. And that's, one of the many factors that played into their downfall that it's still very unfortunate. I know it's a victory in so many ways for the Big 12 right now. But it still sucks, and it still sucks that there's teams out there on an island without a home right now. But you can see we're starting to learn all the real details of what this meant at one point in time. You're like, okay, that's suitors, but none of them had big money offers. Okay,
right.
That makes sense. And so I'm glad that we're unpacking this a little bit and getting more into how this unfolded.
One of the thoughts and the theories about USC and UCLA joining the Big Ten and not wanting Oregon or Washington was because they could have their footprint in California, and also that Oregon and Washington, not to mention, are pretty good. Today, USC had a 4-star cornerback commit to Oregon. Dakota Fields, a top 100 player out of a high school in California, which is Lincoln Riley's trying to lock down that state. And then also today, the Georgia had a safety commit to Alabama, who was committed to Georgia from the state of California, St. John Bosco, which is one of the best schools in the country. But that, to me, when we discussed USC, UCLA, was why would you want Oregon and Washington to be in the same conference to be able to, because especially with what's happening with the Pac-12, because that might be, not that you're afraid to compete against them for recruiting or playing them, but that happened very quickly after the switch.
The way I look at it is if you can keep them out and keep that advantage, then you probably should, right? If you're USC, in your mind, you should do that. But Lincoln Riley's not afraid of anybody, just like Dan Lanning's not afraid of anybody, or Kalen DeBoer when it comes to recruiting. So Chip Kelly, same thing. So all 4 of those schools are going to continue to recruit well. The little 1-year lead advantage they had on snagging some guys that maybe wanted to play in the Big Ten and play in maybe a bigger stage than the Pac-12, that's over now. But I honestly think that it's one of those things that if you have the right coach and you're rolling through and you've got everything that you need, you might lose a recruiter here and have some battles, but you're going to have them anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's not the first recruit that USC's lost to Oregon, and even if everything had stayed status quo, it wasn't going to be the last, no matter conference affiliation. But, I mean, the timing of it does lead you to believe that, yeah, maybe there's something to that. I mean, it certainly doesn't hurt. It only helps. And, having, I guess, camped with them on Saturday and then turning around and making a quick decision, I'm sure that was part of the discussion as well over the weekend. I don't see how it couldn't have been because of all that was going on with Oregon's big announcement. So, yeah, that certainly played some role. How major of one, I don't know. And it'll, play a major role, I'm sure, for some prospects coming up. And I think that's the part that you hate about this whole thing if you're USC or UCLA is you didn't get to experience any of the benefit of it. I guess maybe just speaking about it in recruiting for a year, you got to say, hey, Big Ten, and they're not. But you're not even going to play in the league without them having played in it, right? So, you never leave Oregon. You never, left and had 2 or 3 or 5 years where it was just you and the Big Ten and UCLA, and you were able to really, rub that and use that and weaponize it. You're getting no break from them at all. So I think that kind of sucks from the Lincoln Riley, Chip Kelly perspective, and they'll be fine, of course, but you would have liked to have had that. I'd love to hear their real unfiltered thoughts. Do they like that they have better travel now, or would they have loved longer travel and being the big dogs in LA and really the entire West as far as the power conferences go? I don't know that they'll ever reveal that, but I would imagine there's a little give and take there on both sides of the equation, and they're in a good spot. Just so happens Oregon and Washington are in that good spot with them now.
All right, speaking of recruiting, I'm going to skip over to the running back out of Oak Ridge High School down in Houston in Conroe. This is a 4-star running back, Frankie Arthur. He had offers from Missouri, Oregon, and UCF, and yesterday committed to UCF, which is building up a nice chunk for what they have going on in 2024, and also dipping into the state of Texas. Now, we've discussed kind of how President Crow at Arizona State, he did not want what happened. And there's part of that is his loyalty to the conference and also just did not want to budge. And that's admirable. But also, he has just basically I've used this term and I'll continue to drag through broken glass and also hot coals. He threw this out there last night. He is an Iowa State graduate. He was an athlete at Iowa State. I have good memories of the Big 12 Conference. I look forward to making more. And he throws an old picture of him throwing the javelin. He was a heck of an athlete, but was that, you think, in response because he was a little bit edgy on Friday and didn't seem to be too thrilled with the news?
Well, it wasn't just Friday. It was Thursday at that meeting. It was all of those things that you can just go back and listen to him saying, and maybe looking down his nose at the Big 12 a little bit. And he was, and I don't think there was anything wrong with, defending the Pac-12 until the end, if that's what you wanted and you thought was going to happen. But he does need to start dealing with the reality of things now, and that's you better be an enthusiastic member of the Big 12, and not for the other people in the Big 12. That'll work itself out on its own. But, Michael Crow and Ray Anderson are going to have to answer for the fact that the other school in your state was much more prepared for this storm than you were. And, you got a lifeline and you're lucky, but, if you weren't already who you were, maybe that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, well, I don't think the Big 12 existed when that picture was taken, for one. Yeah, but I know what he's meaning. I know what he's meaning by connecting the dots there. So, that's cool. I think that was probably some just naturally like, hey, I played for one of these schools and now we're back together. And I'm sure part of it too was a little bit of, I'm not the most popular guy in Big 12 country right now, or one of the least popular people at the moment, because I'm not thrilled about this move, but I don't blame him. I don't blame him for who likes losing. We're covering who likes to be on the losing side of things. You just spent last 2 years talking about how you're not going anywhere and how the Pac's going to be great. And it's going to be together. And it's going to be unified and they're going to make money. It's a layup. They're going to make more money than the Big 12. Not that he said all of these things, but he was a part of the mix of people that said all these things and said it for over a year. And to sit there and get all the way to the very end when you're, I guess some were thinking that Oregon and Washington and everything was going to stay together, and have it all blow up last week. Who's taking that well? That was your entire reality shattered. Your future that you thought was going to be a certain way, broken and ripped apart, and you lost. You did. In so many ways you lost because what you wanted to happen didn't happen. And so who's going to take that well? He could have probably said a thing or two differently, but I don't blame the guy for not being thrilled. But yeah, you have to be smarter and understand your audience now. And so I think that's him trying to, probably smooth things over and be a part of that new audience. But I don't blame, I won't say saying things is good, but being upset about it. Yeah, I think naturally every Pac-12 leader is a bit upset these last few days.
I think Friday, what Anderson was the West Virginia comment, but Friday he was at a practice or whatever and was asked a group of media. And one of the things he was talking about was the Apple TV, and made it sound like it was, coming in from Mars. It was
Star
new.
Wars or whatever, yeah.
Mike Gundy. This is from a Max Olson conversation he had with him back in the spring. A lot to get here. I'll kind of comb through this. They're going to pay big money to put it on TV. Those 30 schools are going to thrive, talking about how it's eventually going to be the large super conference. They're going to be rich. Their athletic departments are going to be rich. Their sports are going to be rich or thrive. And there's other schools that don't make it. They're just going to hold on. I think that's eventually what's going to happen in college football, because everything we do is driven by television market. Like, they want to shorten games. People say, what do you want? They don't care what I want. It's what TV wants. TV runs the show. I don't run the show. TV pays all of our salaries, scholarships, everything we do. TV runs the market, whatever they want. That's what we want, and that's what we do. They wanted us to play on a Friday night. I said, who does? They said TV. I said, I think that's great. What about high school football conflict? I love high school football, but the high schools aren't or ain't paying the bills.
Yeah,
no breaking news there, but we've heard other coaches say that, and Mike Gundy of Oklahoma State with his comments to Max.
No, and he's right to mention all that stuff, but especially with the high schools, that coaches, if you play on a Friday night, if you pick the wrong Friday night, that might be a time where you can't go see a recruit that you wanted to, and those things. So, yeah, it stinks. And the other thing about playing on a Friday night is, the recruit that you may want to go see, maybe you weren't going to go see him that week, but now he can't watch your game that you're going to play. All those things. That's all in that, because he's going to be playing the same time that you are. But, yeah, TV runs everything, and it's eventually going to get to where they've devised something that their math tells them is the best thing. And I think that when you've got people in boardrooms making these decisions, a lot of the times they're just looking at, okay, the math of, if we have this team who averages this much on TV and this team who averages this much in the same conference playing each other, then that will mean that the TV numbers would be good, and that's the best way we can make money. Our ad dollars will be more people will sign up for the streaming service, all those things. If we have Team A and Team B who are great big TV drivers doing that. But if Team A and Team B's fans don't give a crap about each other, then you've kind of missed out on the fact that college football was built out of regionality. And if you lose that, you might lose what's driving a lot of the passion in college football.
Yeah, he's just saying what I think a lot of people are worried about, and that is more consolidation and more of the firing up of the Power 2, if you will. I mean, that's unavoidable at this point, and if you're the Big 12, you're taking your victory lap right now. If you're the Pac, you're just trying to survive, and we know, like, just all the tentacles to this entire story of, cause and effect and all that, but yeah, there's no clearing now. Like, it's not as though you added these schools and, like, you're just set for life, Big 12. Here's your lifetime membership. I mean, that's what I'm interested to kind of talk to Mack about is, like, now are you guys, like, washing your backs? Like, what is the strategy now? Or just staying ready? I mean, imagine they've got to just be staying ready for anything at this point. But I think Gundy's just, saying what a lot of coaches and administrators probably are thinking about college sports and particularly college football right now. The Big 12 is stronger than it's been in quite some time, I think, from a unity standpoint, a leadership standpoint, and a team standpoint. But they're not, totally in the clear, but they're far better off, obviously, than others. I mean, you'd much rather be them than be many others dealing with problems at the moment. But yeah, I mean, he's been right on things before. He's been around a long time. I think at this point, he kind of knows the deal, and he knows the feelings and the kind of like something's around the corner or something we need to prepare for. And I think that is that next wave of like, all right, well, now what happens after consolidation, some consolidation occurs. That's what you got to stay on your toes for. So, yeah, I mean, I think Gundy's pretty spot on a lot of times. He's not always the most talkative guy, but when he does talk, I think it's interesting to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, no question. Garrett, I just sent you something we'll bring up when we get a chance. We also are going to show at some point today from earlier, Colt Barber's posting up on SicEm365.com. He has things, a particular group called Banks on the Brazos. It's football related, a lot of statistics. We'll have that for you on the quarterbacks returning to the Big 12 and their drop rate compared to incompletions and where they are with that. One of them includes Hunter Deckers. We know his situation right now is not good. And then there's also a comparison to USC and even Caleb Williams. That's later down the road on this show.
To follow up on what Craig said about consolidation, what I fear is the Super League in where they just go, all right, look, we don't really – you're not doing anything for us, Rutgers and Vanderbilt and South Carolina. Just, your numbers are bad, so we're going to reform this whole thing into, the Super League, and then you guys can figure it out on your own, and we'll add – the schools that we think are the most important and the ones that drive the ratings the most, and then we'll just kind of leave you guys behind. You play for your own thing. And then college football is not at all what we ever watched growing up.
That's when, even if a team I like is involved in that, even if they somehow make the cut, that's when you might I won't stop watching college football, but that's when we're going to discuss it, but that to me is going to be a kick in the nuts if in fact something like that happens, and people think that it will.
Well, there's been the soccer comparison for a long time. I remember reading about that from Bill Connolly in an article years ago. I still don't get people with the relegation thing. That's an aside that I need to bring back up later. The relegation thing doesn't make any sense because who's going to sign up for that? And how would you do that? Like every couple, it just seems like it would be very complicated. And who all is going to be like, yeah, let's do that, where you're just going to move me up and down. And what if Oklahoma's bad for a couple of years? Are they going to get relegated for Texas Tech? That's the part that I need more explanation on how that would work, because I don't see these blue blood schools or the ones that are already in the club signing up for an arrangement where they're maybe not in the club.
Right.
Because they make the wrong hire.
Yeah, but if you want to have a chance, then you might say, okay, we'll be that net, and we'll try to see if we can do enough to get ourselves into it. But that just, to me, I just can't imagine that. But again, I never thought there'd be NIL. I never thought there would be a transfer portal. I never thought that there would be as much realignment as we have seen in recent years, or really for the last several years.
Yeah, I know Stuart Mandel tried to compare what happened last week to relegation, and that was not the best comparison at all, because it wasn't relegation the way that it is meant in soccer and the way it's talked about. But yeah, there's parts of that whole idea where I get it, the Super League and the moving up, but there's just parts of that where Texas isn't agreeing to that. Like they're not going to ever want to leave the club.
Well,
like,
maybe they're tenured.
About?
Maybe Texas and some of those schools get tenured.
Or Ohio State's going to agree to something where, like, if they hire the wrong guy and are bad for a couple years, they get dropped to go play Baylor and San Diego State for 2 years. Like, they're not signing up for that.
The only reason relegation is accepted in the league in England is that it's 100 years of doing it.
Right, yeah.
Like if you just told Man City right now, if you have 5 bad years, going to drop down, and they hadn't been doing that, to be like, no.
Yeah.
We're
Now,
the best team.
You wonder
the
if some
game
of
is
them are
rigged in their
protected.
favor, so the probability of that happening is very, very low,
Yeah.
and that's why they'd maybe it'd go through. But that is part of. If you would have told people that years ago, you're like, no way. Like, so many things would have had to happen. Just going from Oklahoma, Texas alone to USC to UCLA to the Big 12's 4 additions to the Pac-12's departures to where we are now. Like, all the things that have needed to happen pretty much to start making that occur and become a thing have actually happened. And that's the scary part if you're anti-Super League is a lot of dominoes have fallen. And then there's these ACC ones that are starting to shake a little bit that you're like, well, if it was going to happen, this is kind of probably how it would happen, actually. And that's the consolidation part.
When we come back, Dennis Dodd just posted a story about San Diego State trying to find a way to create a Power 5 conference, and what was the result? We'll have that next as far as the story. Right around the corner, John Wilner, Pac-12 Hotline, Bob Thompson, Phil Bennett, Mack Rhoades, and more. This is 365 Sports. Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, my dentist. I'm proud of it, and I am proud of what he's helped me learn and understand about dental work, dental hygiene. It's more than just brushing your teeth. That's, of course, fundamentally, you know that. Flossing, okay. But when you have something that doesn't feel right, it's also treating your gums and making sure you keep them healthy too. But I've had to play catch up, and now I am almost right there at the finish line of what I need to get done. From having a couple of teeth taken out, a couple of implants put in, a crown or two that has been put in, including one just 2 or 3 weeks ago, my lower right side of my jaw. And then there's just a couple more things that I have just on my age and how much I let things slip. Now, I think one of the biggest fears about going to the dentist is if you are somebody that has not been to the dentist enough or anytime recently, you're afraid to go back. I get it. I was that person for the longest of times. Dr. Steve Childress changed my mentality on that. Get it done, because it's only going to get worse if you don't. Dr. Steve Childress, Stonewood Dental, Robinson, Texas.
During the Make This the Summer event, save big on a 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Limited with $3,500 plus 2.9% for 72 months. Or a 2023 Jeep Gladiator Sport with employee pricing for all plus 1.9% for 72 months. And an extra $1,000 rebate. Or if that's not enough, get a 2023 Jeep Compass 10% off MSRP. That's right, and no payments for 90 days on all offers. Find the Jeep that fits you at Allen Samuels in Waco.
The future's bright, the time is now. College is what you make it. It's a late night pizza run and all-nighters coding a new project. It's having big dreams and making them a reality. It's a professor who knows your name and your story. It's preparation for your future, your calling, your life. And at Baylor, it's even more. Baylor, where lights shine bright.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Ben Erlinson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Ben Erlinson, 100 North 6th Street in Waco, 254-759-8533. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
Pioneer Steel and Pipe opened their doors in 1943, and they have never wavered with their focus on great product and customer service, relationships with a handshake, making sure you, the customer, is satisfied. Their new facility is now twice the size, allowing new inventory, higher quantities, and in a much more organized fashion. In addition to the long lengths in tubing, angles, channels, rods, and flat, Pioneer Steel and Pipe now offers several shorter, more convenient lengths of material already cut. Their 2,500 square foot showroom has over 1,000 new products in stock, new welding supplies, hardware, quickcrete, and do-it-yourself components for any project, whether you are a professional contractor or weekend warrior. The new facility is designed to make your loading experience faster and more efficient with easy drive lanes around the building and much more room to get your trailer loaded. Our location may have changed, but our values haven't, and our relationship with customers goes much farther than just business. Pioneer Steel and Pipe on Loop 340 and Highway 6 and just east of I-35 in Waco.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLean County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Poll question that was put up: would you stop watching college football if the 2 super conferences broke off and did their own thing? No said 52%, yes 47%. There's probably a half a percentage here and there. 138 votes very quickly. Those are your results. Now, Dennis started with a story that San Diego State tried to create a new Power 5 conference with the Pac-12, Mountain West, and the AACs, but it fell short. Never really gained much momentum. Essentially trying to create the super conference, reporting to CBS Sports. The president, De La Torre, was trying to push the ensemble that would have accounted or amounted to a breakaway with the best schools from those conferences involved, and including a combination of the Pac-12 leftovers, Cal, Stanford, Oregon State, Washington State, whatever. However, the idea died after Monday night after the Mountain West presidents held a call that ended with leadership showing unity.
Yeah, I mean, basically this is all San Diego State. That's what it was. And it was San Diego State trying to find its way into the Power 5 and to find a place for the West Coast to have a spot and for them to be a part of it. And, you know, I guess only way to, in their eyes, to really kind of make that happen was to get everybody all together and create some alliance into a new conference. And doesn't sound like it got very far. No. I mean, it doesn't sound like it really got even off the ground. If you were comparing it to a plane on the runway, it started speeding up a little bit and then quickly decelerated and never went that far or left, you know, the ground. So sounds like, you know, really nothing in the end and nothing substantial, just preliminary discussions. And I'm curious to know, you know, what exactly about it was, but part of it was the exit fees. And that's something that still needs to be explained. You know, when you're talking about all these movements, people leave certain details out. And it's like, hey, there's these tens of millions of dollars that you're acting like people are just going to be okay with not having. If, you know, yeah, sure, you can just leave and not pay your buyout and we'll not fight that. Like, there's a lot of hoops you still have to jump through to make one of these you know, arrangements happen. So
yeah,
that's unfortunate.
The same $34 million San Diego State was going to pay, so would 3 or 4 other schools from the conference have to pay.
Right, and how would you do it? Would it be you're joining the Pac, or is the Pac joining you? Like, how would all that work? And so I guess they never even got far enough to get into those types of details. That was, it almost sounds almost DOA. So yeah, that's one option off the table. And I do feel for San Diego State and SMU, I mean, you talk about being as close as what seems like humanly possible to joining a power conference just a few weeks ago to now, you know, feeling like where'd all the life rafts go, or where did the couple of life rafts go? So yeah, I don't blame them for trying their hardest.
Yep.
They've been a part of this mix the entire time, but the way things unfolded last week, I don't know. I think it put them in a really bad spot.
Well, you've got 26 teams between the AAC and the Mountain West that, when you add those, combining the two conferences together, which would be, this massive thing if that was what they were doing. But if they wanted to cherry pick, then they're not in a position to be like, look, we're going to take our 3 best friends, and then they have 4 friends, and then AAC, you guys take the coolest 4 of you, and then we've got a 12-team conference because you don't have a voting majority in any thing. So why would the AAC or the Mountain West just let you go and then ruin this where they're not going to get any of that? So, okay, you want to get that $80 million a year or whatever it is from the college football playoff to distribute. That's all well and good, but why would...
You know what? If I was the rest of the Mountain West that was not invited... you could go, but each one of you are paying us $34 million, and we're going to keep all that money ourselves.
But it's also about long term.
Yeah,
so, you're going to get all this money long term. So, if I'm New Mexico and I don't get invited, or San Jose State or something like that, why would I vote for that? Why would I let them go and let them break their lease and all that?
Yeah, what's stated in the article too of I guess the way to avoid all of that is to get enough teams that it dissolves it, and you don't have to pay a buyout. And I've seen that thrown around for multiple scenarios for various conferences is, hey, let's get enough American teams join the pack, the American dissolves, and then they don't have to pay their exit fees, that kind of thing. So this was in the same vein. But yeah, there's just a lot of things to do to make that happen, and it just doesn't appear like there was any real gas on this.
And the problem with that plan, and that could be the ACC plan on the grant of rights. The thing is that past about 4 teams in the ACC, if they got 4 others to dissolve it, those other 4 might be like, all right, we did it.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, where are we going to go?
Yeah, what about your TV contracts?
Yeah.
How does that work? Is a TV partner happy that the Mountain West died, and where are their games now? And, there's a lot of different details to it other than just let's pick up and move and we form a conference. And also, would you... I think one of the bigger questions that needs to be answered now, and it's really only an answer for the next couple of years, quite frankly, as far as the current playoff once it starts, there's only a couple of years on that. And I saw that a lot last week. That was one thing that was bothering me last week was all of you got to save they've got a playoff spot. It's but it's for 2 years, guys. You realize that, right? You're arguing of staying for another 7 simply for 2 years of potentially getting, teams in the playoff. Multiple teams in the playoff. That I don't know why that kept getting brought up as this thing of it was 10 years. It's 2 years. That's all you were getting by signing back up. And then by the time you did that, you could have another 5 years on your PAC contract, and they flipped the rules to where, there's no automatic qualifiers, and being in the PAC doesn't even much matter anymore. So, that didn't work out the way it was as strong of a pull as maybe some people thought. But what does happen if that conference were to form? Is that an A5? I know that's mentioned in the article as well, but I know that that's been talked about, just in general with this whole thing of, okay, now there's 4, or is there still 5? The PAC's obviously got to do what it can, but whatever it does, is it going to be a PAC? Is it going to be an autonomous 5 voting member?
Well,
at the end of it?
That's part of the question, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the part of the question that we don't know. We'd probably need to ask Mack about that because he'll have details on how that actually, happens. But
Mack Rhoades will join us today. In fact, in an hour and about 30 minutes, Baylor Director of Athletics. We're now joined by John Wilner, Pac-12 Hotline, and also the San Jose Mercury News, and many others. John, thank you. Paul, Catalina, Craig, and David Smoak, we appreciate your time. Let's start with today. How hot or legitimate is anything Stanford Cal in the ACC?
I lost him.
Okay. We'll try to get him, try to hook him up again. By the way, I just saw on the chat room, please like and subscribe when you can with what we do. I rarely ever say that, but the numbers, of course, have been soaring for the last 3.5 years, and we do appreciate you. John Wilner, Pac-12 Hotline. John, how much smoke or how hot and legitimate is Stanford Cal in any conversations with the ACC?
I'm not sure I'd say it's hot. I would say warm, and I would probably put Big Ten conversations as cool but not cold. Both schools are pushing hard for membership and one of those two conferences. I think the Big Ten makes a lot of sense for them because then you got a 16 Western Division, and it would solve a lot of the travel demands on the athletes that the schools out west are facing, and that the Big Ten, the 14 Big Ten schools in the Midwest, their athletes would have to go out the West Coast far fewer times if you had a 16 division. I think that makes a lot more sense, but it's going to get down to whether ESPN will pay for them to get into the ACC and whether Fox will pay for them to get into the Big Ten.
John, why these two schools in particular are on the outside looking in? What about, I mean, because we know all the great things, gigantic, endowments and educational giants and, I mean, elite when it comes to that. But how did they find themselves lost in the wilderness in all this?
TV ratings. I mean, really comes down to how the networks value, and in this case, it was Fox. I mean, Stanford and Cal, I don't think we're ever going to be, like Washington and Oregon. They were not going to go into the Big 12 ever. So it's basically Fox's valuation, and are they worth, the money that Fox has to pay to get them into the conference and pay them every year? Are they going to provide that much return based on viewership trends and their media market? And, Stanford, if this had happened 4 or 5 years ago, Stanford would have been a no-brainer because they were a powerhouse for, 6-8 years and did very well in TV ratings. But the program has fallen off at just the wrong time. And so Fox, to this point, did not put enough value on them to justify paying them.
John, I know that you were all over this story, especially from the Pac perspective, and let it be known, they're in some danger. There's some things that didn't go right along the way, but just from your point of view, how did last Friday kind of unfold? I know everybody sort of explained, hey, they were in and then they were out, and then all of a sudden it was shocking and what have you, but just from your perspective, the end of the Pac in this form at least, what was just kind of the way that it unfolded on your end?
Well, I mean, it's kind of the way I thought if it broke apart, it was going to unfold how it did. The top existential threat to the Pac-12 was always the Big Ten. And as long as the Big Ten presidents and Fox were not interested in adding Oregon and Washington, the Pac-12 was going to stay together. And the Pac-12 had, 10, 11 months when those two entities were kind of taking a snooze on the expansion front. And then they woke up and derailed it. I mean, the Pac-12 presidents for the other 7 schools woke up on Friday morning planning to sign their grant of rights. I mean, Arizona's president said they were going to put it in blood, so to speak. But the Big Ten and Fox worked Oregon and Washington overnight, and so that derailed the whole thing. But that was always the chief threat. When the Pac-12 did not take advantage of that huge window when the threat was not, didn't exist, didn't take advantage of that to get the deal done.
Wasn't that then also that perhaps the Big 12 was underrated, that what they could accomplish when Yormark stepped in line and got the deal done? I understand the Big Ten and the history and all that, very similar to the Pac-12, and Oregon, Washington pretty much was the death blow. But was there perhaps maybe not enough attention or enough respect for the Big 12?
I think Yormark did a perfect job executing the strategy that his presidents want. And he positioned the Big 12 to be a destination for the mountain schools. But I get back to the fact that, Colorado's a little bit different case because it's got 60 years in the Big 12. But for the Arizona schools in Utah, their preference was always to stay in the Pac-12, right? And you think about all the stuff that has happened in the Pac-12 in the last 13 months, USC, UCLA leave, the problems with the negotiations, they still were ready to sign. That was their preference unless they had no choice. And when Oregon and Washington left, they had no choice. But that's not to diminish the job Yormark did strategically in putting the Big 12 in position to take advantage of the opportunity if it had presented itself. And it did.
Why is George Kliavkoff still employed by the Pac-12?
Well, the Pac-12 currently consists, I believe, I am not 100% sure, but based on my reading of the bylaws, the Pac-12 currently consists of 4 schools that have voting rights. So if they want to get rid of him, it's Oregon State, Washington State, Stanford, and Cal are the ones who would have to vote him out. He's got basically 3 years left on a contract that's paying him $3.5 million. So I don't know if they're taking that into account, but it's those schools have the power to make the change.
John, is there any chance? And again, I'm asking you because you're right there in the middle of it. Was there any chance? You'd mentioned Stanford and Cal were never going to join the Big 12. Was there almost a disdain for the Big 12 in many ways? And why perhaps when Kliavkoff said no to them a year ago and then came back and said, hey, you want to have a drink? Was that what it was in your opinion?
For sure. I mean, that's been the case. The Pac-12 has had an arrogant outlook on every conference that's not the Big Ten and maybe the ACC. The Pac-12 presidents have looked down upon every other conference for years. I mean, that's nothing new. I mean, they should have merged to form the strategic alliance years ago. Bob Bowlesby and Larry Scott talked about it pre-COVID, and there wasn't enough interest out here. Then they had the chance to add schools in the summer of 2021, and they didn't. And then they could have moved quicker on, SMU and San Diego State. I know they're not in the Big 12, but the Pac-12 presidents have always taken a very high and mighty attitude about their conference and looked down upon the other ones that aren't the Big 10. Absolutely.
John, so at $23-25 million, they would have signed that deal if Oregon and Washington had decided to take that medicine, even no linear and all that. They were just going to take the medicine and go?
They were going to take it, absolutely. They were all prepared. The other 7 were prepared at 6:30 Friday morning to sign. A few schools had even signed the document overnight, and they were all ready to do it. And then at 10, I think it was about 10 minutes before 7, Oregon and Washington let it be known to the other 7 that they were not going to sign. And so it all unraveled from there. But absolutely, they had the deal done overnight. Multiple presidents, including ASU and Arizona, have spoken about that publicly. It was a done deal. The way they viewed the media contract with Apple was that it was going to be difficult the first 2 years. It was a 5-year deal. It was going to be tough to swallow the first 2 years, but huge benefits the last 3 years. And then it just unraveled. I think what did it was, and I don't know this, guys, just to be clear, this is my own speculation. But what I think happened is that overnight, Oregon and Washington got a commitment from the Big Ten that they would get a full shares of revenue in the next contract. So when the Big Ten goes back to market in 2030 for a contract that's going to span the 2030s, Oregon and Washington will get 100% shares of that deal.
The expansion piece of this, that's now it's a totally different expansion conversation, and we don't know what the Pac's going to be or exist or whatever, but the San Diego State and SMU stuff, while they were still in negotiations with Apple and whoever else, how close were those two to ever becoming members, John? And are you still sort of scratching your head a bit about just the order of things? Because it was always puzzling to me of we'll negotiate and then we'll expand. I just felt like that was almost backwards in some ways, that you'd want to know who you have and negotiate with who you're going to have. But can you kind of just explain how close that ever really was with those two?
Oh, very close. I mean, those two schools thought they were in, and they thought they were going to be in on Friday because they thought that the grant of rights was going to get signed at 7 a.m. on Friday morning, and that, by the end of the day, those two schools would have membership invitations, or at least the state would. They were the easy spot for Colorado, and in a lot of respects, that would have been an upgrade for the Pac-12, just San Diego State straight in for Colorado, partly because of the location that's so important. But, yeah, they were very close. And I agree with you. I never understood why they were doing it that way. To me, the Big 12 provided a model, right? The strength in numbers model that the Big 12 implemented, in the summer of 21 under Bowlesby when they got the 4 schools, and then they went to the TV networks with a solid 12, really. That was the model. And the Pac-12 looked at it and just, they just didn't get it.
Why not? Why, if they have all this academic prestige, these institutions that have all these brainiacs and all of this, John, how? How could they not get it?
They don't have they do have brainiacs running those schools, but they don't know anything about sports.
Yeah.
They don't know anything about sports media. And that's been proven time and time again. I mean, they signed off on the Pac-12 networks 12 years ago, and obviously that was a failure. And the whole thing with 7 different networks and all that, they don't know anything about sports media. At least most of them don't. There's a couple who are pretty savvy.
Sure.
Arizona and Washington State are pretty savvy. Don't have any idea. And so they're reliant upon the 2 commissioners that have been in place, and those commissioners have made some questionable or downright erroneous strategic decisions.
John, at media days when George Kliavkoff kind of fumbled the bag up on the podium that day, did you start to wonder if it was about to get more chaotic? Because it just was such a poor performance, and the first time we'd heard from him in months, and then that happened, and there was even less clarity than there was before he walked up there.
Well, no, I mean, I thought that his performance, was not a good performance, but it didn't change my view. I thought it was going to be dicey. I thought there was a good chance Colorado was going to be leaving, and that could have repercussions for the other, for the remaining 9, and that was the case. I mean, that was to me that I had half a dozen conversations with Pac-12 folks, and all of them were worried about Colorado at that point. And what was it, 5 days later? I can't remember my dates, but it was like 5 days later it happened. And, nobody was surprised that Colorado left.
John, what happens? I mean, I know it's the $64 million question is like who goes where and all of that, but obviously there's a lot of people that feel very badly for Oregon State and Washington State. We know Cal Stanford apparently have, a couple of options, but as far as a brand, a name, the logo, the pack, whatever, is that still a thing moving forward, or do you think that's on its dying legs?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I'm in that group. I feel terrible. So I'm not supposed to, get emotional at all about this kind of stuff, but I do feel really bad for Oregon State and Washington State. I mean, I would argue there's no athletic department in the country, in the Power 5, that does more with its resources than Washington State. They got the lowest budget in the Power 5. They've been to bowl games 7 years in a row. They really do a great job with what they have. And Oregon State does too. And they did nothing wrong. They are just the innocent victims of the realignment situation. And you worry that they're going to have to cut sports, that they're going to have to lay people off. And it's just really kind of gutting what's going on with the 2 of them. Now, I think the Pac-12 name, it may stay. I mean, if Stanford and Cal can't get into the ACC or Big Ten, I think there's a good chance that they band together these 4 schools and they try to rebuild something. And they could easily go into the American and grab a couple schools from the American to get them up to 6 for next season. And then they can add the top tier of the Mountain West for the 25 season. And so 2 years from now, they got a 10-team conference that's, got some decent football.
Is the Apple deal dead, though, with everyone leaving, with the 6 schools out the door? If it was $23 million or whatever it was in streaming, is anyone going to give them enough money in a TV deal if there's 6 teams to be able to move forward?
Well, the Apple deal as it was presented is dead.
Yeah.
It's expired. They could come up with another deal with Apple for less money. I mean, if you've got, you'd have some pretty good markets, for somebody. I don't know what Fox. Part of it would depend on what Fox and CBS are looking at with the Mountain West. The Mountain West contract with those 2 networks expires, I think, at the end of the 25 football season. So, they may decide, Fox may decide, we'd rather, instead of just keeping the Mountain West, we would rather have, kind of a conference that includes a few of the Pac-12 schools and a few American schools. There'd be you get a lot of markets there. You get Seattle, Bay Area, San Diego, Dallas. It wouldn't be a bad move for Fox as kind of a replacement for what they have with the Mountain West.
you've been around a long time. You've seen a lot of different things, a lot of expansion, realignment, what have you. These last 2-3 years obviously have been as chaotic as it seems like ever, for most of us at least. What does all this tell you about just the direction of college sports, but college football in particular, John? Just putting all the clues and pieces together, where do you think all this is shaping up to go?
Well, I mean, it's really I've thought this for a long time. Fox and ESPN are the grandmasters in this chess game, and the conferences and the schools are the pawns. And the schools are put in that position because of the way the NCAA is structured, right? I mean, it would be very different if football had never been included in Title IX. Everything would be very different, right? Because of the economics that underline football and what that does to the structure of your athletic department. It puts the schools in the position where they got to chase the TV money. And I think that all we're going to see, if you think out 5-7 years, right, there's a good chance that streaming is going to be the main way fans consume live sports, right? And that was part of Kliakoff's strategy with Apple, was that by the time that contract ended, that's where you wanted to be. Apple is probably going to end up owning ESPN in a few years, right? And Amazon's coming too. But it's just going to be different faces in that chess game. Instead of ESPN Fox, maybe it's Apple and Amazon calling all the shots. But that's kind of where we're headed, I think.
John, we have Bob Thompson, who's been on with us probably half a dozen or maybe a dozen times in the last 13 months. You have him in your story. I didn't copy and paste it and publicize it, but I did get a chance to read it about maybe Bob Thompson, depending on what they do with Kliavkoff, as an interim or at least as a consultant. I mean, this is kind of what he does. Yeah, and he's going to come on here in about 10 minutes, and I'll send you the segment we have. But I think why not, right? What would it hurt them to do that?
Well, it wouldn't hurt at all because they need. I mean, that's going to be the key to rebuilding the conference. Would be they got to find a media deal, and so you hire a former Fox president to do that. I mean, to me, it makes all the sense in the world. I just don't see how they could go to the media companies, whether it's Apple or Fox or whoever, and try to get a deal with Kliavkoff running the show. That doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense to me. Bob makes tons of, it's kind of like I thought back to the Big 12 situation, right? Didn't they bring in Chuck Venus for a year and a half?
Yep, they did.
After Beebe, before Bowlesby. And Chuck obviously had deep experience in college sports. He wasn't a TV guy, but he fit exactly what the Big 12 needed at that time. And I think Bob would do the same thing out here.
Who among Stanford or Cal, and I know about the endowments, we also know that Stanford's like in a different stratosphere, could either one of them go at it for however long they needed to as an independent? Is that even on the table?
I think it's probably on the table, more so for Stanford than Cal, maybe for both. I mean, the way that would unfold is, they just don't like they can't get in the ACC and Big Ten, and they just don't like the option of trying to rebuild the Pac-12. So they stick football. Football becomes independent, and then they put their Olympic sports probably in the West Coast Conference. It's a better fit for them than maybe the Mountain West. And then they go at it as independents in football, and they try to position themselves to get in the Big Ten in 2030. Stanford, I mean, if Stanford wants to, they could buy the Pac-12. I mean, they got more money than God. They got more money than God. But that depends on the university being willing to spend money. If they want to, they could certainly exist financially as independents. The problem with independents, though, right, is the scheduling. And what do you do for good? Once the power leagues get into their conference play, you're kind of left scheduling Middle Tennessee State and Idaho State, and that's the problem.
I know this is a hypothetical, but if Stanford or Cal could either one have to join the Big 12 or give up football, what would they do?
Probably give up. Well, I should say that there's people who think that they should. There's been people who think they should give up football for many years, and part of that is because they see what's coming with the employee thing, right? When eventually the athletes are going to get deemed either employees or pseudo-employees, and there's going to be a revenue sharing deal with the schools. I mean, there's a lot of folks who think Stanford and Cal are getting out when that happens.
Yeah.
And, other schools too. How are Northwestern and Vanderbilt and the Wake Forests of the world going to respond if they've got to share revenue with the players? But if that was their only choice, Big 12 or football, there would be some heavy discussions about that.
And Ed, final thing, you have been covering the Pac-12 for a long, long time. You have the podcast. You have your Pac-12 hotline. How Craig brought this up, and it's obviously been difficult. We're talking about Oregon State and Washington State. But when you look around, what do you see? How are you feeling?
I'm fascinated by what's going to happen with these four schools for sure. And then we got football season, and then I've always been covering the issues that matter to the schools, whether it's under the banner of they're playing under the banner of the Pac-12 or whatever. That doesn't really matter. I mean, I could just make the Pac-12 hotline the Wilner hotline and keep rolling.
Yeah, it's amazing. How many times did you wake up the next day after something you had reported and you went, what the hell is going on?
In these last 13 months?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. It's been, it's like if I was covering a team. Let's say I was covering Baylor, and they spent 13 months hiring a football coach. That's what it's been like, because you got to deal with the rumors. You got to deal with other media reports and determining what's true, what's not true. It's a very competitive situation. So it's, you're always thinking about it, what stories are out there. It has been incredible. I never would have guessed on June 30th, 2022, that the Pac-12 would still be trying to get this thing done 13 months later. It was incredible.
John, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. Good luck with the coverage moving forward with the four schools and whatever happens with them, Washington State, Oregon State, Stanford, and also Cal. Appreciate his time. When we come back, Bob Thompson was in John's article about maybe someone who can help them figure this out. Bob Thompson, former Fox Sports executive, is around the corner. Craig?
Yeah, just a quick recruiting note. You mentioned at the top of the show, UCF had picked up a four-star running back yesterday.
Yep, Arthur.
And they have now added a four-star safety as Rockledge, Florida high school safety Jalen Hayward has committed to UCF. 6'2", 198. He was previously committed to Georgia at one point in time, but he decided to decommit last month, and now he's going to be heading to UCF. So big pickup and big week so far for the Knights, and I don't know if that's Big 12 rub or whatever you attribute that to. But
Gus Malzahn said it was back when he talked to us.
Yeah, but attributing whatever you want to that, certainly I'm sure that plays a role, and that's a couple 4 stars in 2 days for them. So you talk about the schools coming in and who could have the biggest impact and all of those types of things. There's a reason why UCF is normally one of the first teams mentioned, and they're certainly seeing some good things in recruiting right now.
When we come back, Bob Thompson, Phil Bennett also just around the corner. Mack Rhoades, Baylor Director of Athletics at 5, 365 Sports. The city of Woodway, they have hotels. They have a lot of different events that they put on, but they have hotels, and if you're coming to town, and for a couple of different reasons, one of them might be because of the tourist attraction, which is Magnolia, which is the Silos, and maybe you're looking for a place, and you go, well, that's closed. They don't have room. There are, and when I arrived here in 2010, I don't know if there were 6 hotels, quite frankly, and so there are a bunch, and Woodway has 7 of them. 7 of them, so if you're looking around to come in for a Baylor game and or to come in for a tourist attraction, you can absolutely do that. And coming up, remember, there's the movie night, Woodway Family Movie Night featuring Luca, not Doncic, but Luca. That's on August the 11th, 8 o'clock until 9:30. There's the Farmers Market that will be awesome to be a part of with great opportunity for you to find produce and product. It's at August the 20th, 10 until 11. The Woodway Wine Fest in September. The Farmers Market again back in September. If you want more information, you can find it at discoverwoodway.com.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. And if you can't make it to Riverbend, DoorDash is available to bring it to you. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma. And they have to come here. They're used to lights. They're used to water in their mouth. They're used to experience. They already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8-year-old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
Here we go, this 4 o'clock hour, 365 Sports. Thank you for watching when you do. He has become a go-to and has been incredible along the way. In Bob Thompson, former Fox Sports president, also has his own company, consultant as well on 365 Sports. Bob, we just had John Wilner on, and in an article he wrote from the Pac-12 hotline, he suggested that if the Pac-12 was to move off of George Kliavkoff, that they should call you. Have they called you?
No, they haven't called. John told me he was going to write that right before he hit send, and I thought he was kidding. But I don't understand why everybody wants me to go back to work. Anyway, I'm not sure that's likely to happen for a variety of reasons.
But there are golf courses that would suffer.
Yeah, they would absolutely. But if someone said, "Hey, would you just come help us as a consultant," because you do that. You're an Oregon guy. I mean, you've watched this conference that you love just basically just dissolve. Would that be enough for you to get interested for a little bit?
Yeah, look, I'll always listen to somebody, but and I wanted the Pac to survive as much as anybody. I think it's important to college football in general. I like the regionality of college football. And it seems as though, we've lost a lot of that over the last few years. And it's probably not over. I mean, if anybody thinks they're safe, I think they're kind of fooling themselves. I mean, you got to start here in the Big Ten or the SEC and some of the lower performing schools in those conferences. How long is it until, they start eating their own? You got to be concerned about that.
Bob, what do you see as the end game as conferences get bigger and bigger?
Well, I think a lot of it depends on how long the TV money's there to kind of help them with those decisions. And, the media business is in quite a difficult place right now. I mean, they're continuing to lose subscribers to their linear networks. And I'm not sure that fuel is that you can consider that that's going to be there forever. So at that point, then you have to start look at what's the next driver. I think everyone agrees that at this point, it's not going to be streaming. I mean, that might be the case down the road, but I think the Pac-12, at least certainly two of the schools in the Pac-12, made their votes when they kind of eschewed the Apple deal and went for the kind of the guaranteed NFL model that the Big Ten operates under.
Bob, the Pac had its opportunities. It could have saved itself at a couple of different points. It thought it was going to do that last Friday, but as you saw the news come in on Oregon and Washington to the Big Ten and kind of the nail in the coffin, so to speak, of just the culmination of all that's been talked about the last year or two, what were your thoughts on seeing that move in particular and just kind of the dissolution of what we knew the Pac to be?
Well, I think when I talked with you guys a week or 10 days ago, I mentioned that I thought they could survive if the four corner schools left. I think at that point, Colorado had already made their decision. But once Oregon and Washington left, that was what was left of the kind of the conference in terms of brand names. And it was very sad. I'm an Oregon grad, but I'm a Pac-12 fan. And I'm happy to see that Oregon is going to have a place to play in a relevant conference. But I'm also sad to see the Pac-12 end this way. I don't think it had to be that way. I think the conference administration and the conference presidents made a number of mistakes over the years that could have been avoided. And that they could, if they hadn't made those mistakes, they would be in a different place than they are now, which is, four schools looking for a home.
Bob Thompson with us, 365 Sports. Did the Pac-12 lack, and Wilner just said this, lack people who ran colleges who did not understand athletics? Robbins, Schultz, and that's about it? Well,
it's hard for me to say that presidents and chancellors change so often these days. Virtually none of them are around who I dealt with, 10 years ago. And so they're not positions where people stay in them a long time, kind of like coaches. They tend to move around a lot. So, and they don't always have, a background, with athletics as part of their core curriculum. So it's a difficult thing for them to understand, and they tend to delay, and then maybe make some decisions, but they're not always quick to pull the trigger when they should. And I think that's what creates a problem for a lot of these conferences.
Bob, is there a reasonable path financially forward for the ACC, ESPN, and Stanford and Cal, and Ross Dellinger is reporting now, maybe even SMU, into that deal to where it makes sense where everybody's going to see a bump from that and not just a little bit of a travel cost increase in the contract?
I saw Ross's story and it, looked at the Stanford Cal parts of the ACC, and I think it makes some sense for a couple of reasons. ESPN, I'm sure, would like to try and figure out a way to get them more money, but ESPN is also, pretty happy probably with the contract they signed a number of years ago that runs through 2034, 36, I think it is. But if you add Stanford Cal, you add SMU, is that a way for you to potentially increase the distribution for the ACC network? which would create found dollars for the conference and for ESPN, and maybe some of those found dollars, end up in a higher proportion of it ends up in the ACC schools as opposed to ESPN. That could be one of the reasons they would look at something along those lines.
If you're the Big 12, and obviously you have to discuss this with your TV partners, of course, but are they fat and happy now with the recent moves that have been made? I mean, that's 8 schools added in the last couple of years, 4 in just the last week, or are you sitting there still with a little bit of an appetite and waiting to see what else goes on other parts in the country?
I'm Brett doesn't seem to be the guy retiring type. So I would think he's still, probably got some ideas. I don't know where the networks are at as far as continuing to fund his ideas. Clearly he wants to be on the West Coast. Clearly he wants to have a presence in New York. And I'm not talking about Rucker Park. I'm talking about playing games in the Garden. And, he's going to emphasize basketball. So he's just got to figure out a way to pay for what he wants. And, again, I'm not sure that the networks are necessarily going to want to fund those initiatives, but maybe there are other outlets out there that would.
Bob, I don't know this. Mack Rhoades is going to join us here in about an hour, and I was going to ask him this. I've heard that the incoming schools in the Big 12 are going to get a full share. We knew about Colorado, 31.7, and whatever that number might be overall, counting everything like 44, 45, 50 million, whatever that is. But ESPN had the pro rata. I don't think Fox did. Have you heard anything about whether or not they decided, nope, we'll chip in what we need to get all 4 of them to the Big 12?
I have not heard that. I mean, I know Brett McMurphy was talking about that they had agreed on the first 2, but not necessarily on the next 2. I know, historically at Fox, we were not fans of automatic ads, but certainly it's something that we would negotiate with the conference at any point in time. But I'm not sure exactly how that worked. I did read the same, information that you've seen that everybody was going to get the 31.7 on average. You got to remember that's on average. So they're probably starting in the 28, and they're probably going to end at 35, and that 31.7 is probably the middle year. So he's got. Maybe Fox didn't pay, maybe they did. You got to remember, Brett's sitting on $100 million from Texas and OU. That pays for a few mil.
I'm going to ask Mack about that when we have him. I was going to ask that same question. Bob Thompson with us on 365 Sports.
Well, I didn't even think about that part, Bob, about having that money that you could use to expand with. How do you see the competition heading, like as far as TV contracts? Probably early on in this, trying to make your brand statement, if you're the Big 12, if you're everybody else, changing as now there's one less conference to worry about when it's competing. Do you think you will see more aggressive, like things like the ESPN does with the SEC, the Big 12, of trying to make sure your brand is out there so that 5, 6, 7 years from now, they're in supposedly a better position to negotiate?
I would think, given all the movement, there's going to be some significant rebranding of a number of these conferences. I know Brett Yormer's already talked about kind of refreshing the whole Big 12 brand. I don't know about name changes. They quit counting them correctly a few years back. So I don't know that that's an issue, but I do think you're going to want to make your presence felt across the country, because it's not just regional anymore. You're national in scope, and you need to kind of have that kind of a branding across the country. And the other thing I think that everybody's going to have to take a real hard look at is, how the CFP is going to be structured going forward. This whole idea of are there going to be automatic bids, or is it just going to be the top 12 rated schools? I can tell you what the Big Ten and the SEC are probably looking at, and it's probably not what the ACC and the Big 12 and certainly not the Pac-12 are going to be thinking about. So there's going to be, all we've done is we've got, auto bids for the next couple of years. Beyond that, it's still kind of an open negotiation. So I think people are going to start getting, trying to figure out how to put themselves in the best position so that when we get to the CFP negotiations, they're kind of, at the forefront and have their brand out there, and it's truly identifiable and it's synonymous with top tier football.
Bob, last thing for you. We appreciate your time. Phoenix and Scottsdale and Glendale and Tucson, et cetera, with ASU and Arizona. But obviously that's a pro sports town like Denver is near Colorado, but it is a market. How much of Phoenix in that area is an ASU and Arizona market when it comes to eyeballs, in your opinion?
ASU seems to have more predominance here, at least certainly in my part of town. Arizona is just not quite at the same level, but they're still both very, very popular within the state, and the fans are, it's just like Oregon and Oregon State, and I don't know if there's anything like Utah and BYU, but there's a lot of competition between Arizona State and Arizona, and I think I may probably know more Arizona grads or Arizona State grads. The Arizona grads I know are very loud and powerful.
Thank you, sir. If you do, by the way, change your mind on that Pac-12 commissioner's job, send me a text, would you? We appreciate that.
Yeah, you guys will be the first to know.
Bob Thompson from day one has been amazing with us. Yeah, if Bob says no, you have three guys we could recommend, all of them at the same level with Bob and Jim and also Patrick Crates. We appreciate his time. When we come back, Phil Bennett, he coached at Arizona State. His thoughts about the Sun Devils and SMU. His thoughts about the Sun Devils coming to the Big 12. And Craig's Off the Radar, Mack Rhoades, and more. 365 Sports. Pioneer Steel and Pipe. 1943, they opened up their doors, and here they are with this brand new facility on Loop 340 and also Highway 6 just east of 35 in Waco. Pioneer Steel and Pipe, 1943. Their distribution center, and they've always been very efficient, but their distribution center has more bays, more areas for the trucks and trailers to get to what you need to get it loaded for you to take it back to the construction site. It was always good, and now it's fantastic. Their product has always been good. Now there's just a lot more of it. 2,500 square foot showroom, over 1,000 new parts or product for you to buy when you get there at Pioneer Steel and Pipe. Brand new facility, bigger, better, faster, stronger, but the same values of customer service and doing it right and with a handshake. PioneerBoys.com.
Cars priced right, day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Where is the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House, unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu from our pasture to your plate at TexasBeefHouse.com. Samantha Duvall joins us. She's the marketing director who knows all of the specials and also the events coming up. And thank you very much, as always, for your time. So all of these holidays are over. We've hit the meat of, literally, of the summer. And your thoughts about as you hit the month of August and into football season, Samantha?
Football season's right around the corner, so that means it's perfect time for tailgating. The best time to grab our hamburger patties is right now through the end of July. We still have our sale going on with our regular patties and our jalapeno and cheese patties. They're $12 a package, so that's 4 patties to a package. It's perfect for the time for football. gather all your family around. That way you can grill it up.
Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House, unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu and how they age it as well. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, locally owned pizza place that's out of this world. Everything from the dough, the sauce, the sausage topping is made fresh in-house. Not to mention the amazing pizza pillows, the chicken wings are to die for. Try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries or tots, plus great specials on food and drink every single day. Shorty's is also the perfect spot to watch the game with your friends. Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby. Tell them Paul sent you by.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, raise your cholesterol, and cause weight gain. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results. So if you're tired of being tired, call or go online at pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $165 a month, including lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, and follow-up visits, compared to $300 or more a month in Dallas or Austin, and you don't have to drive 90 miles one way or the other and fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T has board-certified physician consultations and will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone. Contact Petty Clinic Low T for increased energy, improvement in sexual desire and performance, mood, concentration, even a decrease in body and belly fat. Just off Highway 84 and Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway, pettycliniclowt.com.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Here we go. Phil Bennett, former Baylor defensive coordinator. He has been around a lot of the Big 12 schools, or those leaving or those coming, including Arizona State, plus SMU. Some smoke about the ACC along with Cal and Stanford. Coach, thanks for your time with Craig and Paul. David Smoak with you. What did you think when you heard Arizona State, which they didn't seem to want to leave, but now they're headed to the Big 12?
Well, you know, when I think of Arizona State, I've told you this. It's an unbelievable place. Their fans are awesome. The setup's awesome. Not so much with the administration. And I don't think that they really understand what was happening. It was obvious by Ray's comment about Morgantown that they weren't that jacked up about it, but really they left themselves no option. So I wasn't surprised. You know, Dr. Crow's been there 20-plus years. They've never been assertive enough to be the great program that they could be.
When you know that being on the coaching staff and having to swim upstream, because you've been in both situations where you have administrations that are, you know, whatever you need will give you what you need and get out of your way, and then you have some that just don't follow along very well. What is that like as a coach to know that you're in a place like Arizona State, this is great campus and this great place with all these assets you could bring people into, but then you just get a little pushback from the top?
You know, Paul, the thing that gets me is that we've got too many people, not just Arizona State, that are making decisions about college athletics, college football in general, that are not qualified to make those decisions. Now, I'm sure, Crow is a really good president. He's done a lot of good things. Ray's not qualified to be an athletic director. Ray has no college background other than playing at Stanford, baseball and football, been in the NFL, was a player's agent. You know, he's the guy that said that he hired Herm Edwards. I was there, could have stayed. He wanted it to be set up. I don't know if you guys remember this, like the model of an NFL team. General manager, player, and look where it got them. They haven't even got their probation yet, which is going to be an issue because they really didn't have a clue And Dr. Crow allowed that. And even kept him after. So, it's sort of the way. And also, you can say the same thing about the Pac-12. When I was there, I didn't think they were very assertive at all, like the Big 12, the SEC, the Big 10, of selling their product. I just feel like it's been very underachieving in a lot of ways.
Coach, from a coach's standpoint, how much does what conference you're in matter, and how does that matter? And as like a B-side to that, now if you're Baylor, TCU, Texas Tech, how much does it matter having Colorado, Arizona as part of the territory, so to speak, and vice versa? If you're Arizona State and Kenny Dillingham, now you know you're going to play games in Texas. How much does that matter, if at all? Do we overrate that?
Well, no, I think it matters. Now, let's be honest. I'm 68 years old. The Pac-12 is a historical conference. And 2 years ago, when David called me and said I was going to be on, I thought of this conversation. A guy that's very high in the bowl championship series told me one night over dinner and drinks, he said by 2026, there's only going to be 64 teams that are D1. And there's going to be 4 divisions of 16. And all the rivalries will be back in place. And after that, those 64, there's going to be the rest of them. And he said, and they're going to have their championship, and the large schools are going to have theirs. I called him when this went down with the Pac-12. And I said, do you sticking by your statement? He said, absolutely. He said, television knows they can't exist. Now, the one issue that I think it's a win for the Big 12, but the one issue that they don't have, and David, you and I have talked about this before, they have no blue bloods in that conference. And when you don't have a Texas, an Oklahoma, Alabama, a USC, a Michigan, no blue bloods, television is going to be run by the people that make those decisions. And I think that, though I think it's going to be a great conference, a competitive conference, you just can't say out of our 16 teams, there's a true blue blood in there.
No, but one good news, Phil, is that ESPN put their chips in with the Big 12, and Fox did too, and they did not with the Pac-12. So you're right. There's no alpha as far as tradition, all of that. Can somebody come out of the ashes? And I don't want to. That's probably not the right word. Can somebody come out among those who will be a part of the 16 and be a blue blood, or is that a 100-year type of story?
You know who the last earned blue blood in my mind was? This is my 50th year. It's Clemson. Clemson has become an earned blue blood. I always thought it would be A&M, but it hadn't. For whatever reason. I always thought, and you and I have talked about this, I thought between facilities, I always thought A&M had the chance to be that next, if you sit there and you look at it and you throw them out, even though they're not sometimes great in football, you've got UCLA, USC, Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska used to be, which would rule they might get back. Then you got Florida, Auburn is, Ole Miss is not, Alabama, Tennessee has worked their way back up. Of course, Michigan, Notre Dame, Ohio State, those are the ones that you sit there and they've all been sectional. Everybody's had one, even back in the old Southwest Conference, Texas and A&M. Then you had USC and UCLA, Michigan, Ohio State, Florida, Alabama, LSU could be in there. They had more. In the ACC, you had Clemson, and maybe not as much, but even at one time, North Carolina was close to being there. So I like the conference. I look at the schedules and the games, and they excite me. I mean, and I'm going to tell you something. The Baylor fans, I can tell you right now, if you play in Tempe first go. It's an unbelievable atmosphere. You know, the stadium is between two mountains, great fans, so much to do. You know, Sun Valley is awesome, and I think the players can look forward to that. If I'm Kenny Dillingham, I'm thinking, I can think Houston, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, Central Texas. You know, hey, you got something to sell.
Yeah, well, we were actually, Phil, Garrett, our producer, and I were just there when we were at the Super Bowl. We went to see a comedy show at the basketball arena. We were walking around going, man, this is an untapped reservoir of athletic awesomeness there.
Yeah.
It really is. It's a beautiful, fantastic campus.
You know, I think, you know, and I'm not, I think Dr. Crow and Ray are fine people. I just don't think they've done a great job of what they're trying to sell there. I don't think the Pac-12 has ever had the leadership. You know, they've always depended on USC and UCLA and Washington, and now Oregon. Oregon's probably another one of those new blue bloods guys. You know, they've always depended on them to lead the back. And I remember going out there, they had an office, a big Pac-12 office. You can look this up. It was in San Francisco, and I'm telling you, it looked like a movie studio. It was more wasted money than anything I've ever seen. And I thought to myself, what in the world? Why are they spending this money? And then, you know, 4 years later, we come to this.
Coach, when you talk to your brethren around that are still coaching, what is like the big topic that you hear probably more than any other?
NIL and transfer portal.
Okay.
Yeah, it's now coaches don't. I mean, don't get me wrong. They care about realignment. You know, I read something where Nick, and I sort of feel like Nick. The rivalry's going away. It bothers me. You know, hell, I've told you, David, this before. If I had my druthers, we'd still be in the Southwest Conference. You know, but it just the television has become such an influencer over who you are, what you are, that I just, it bothers me. But at the same time, I understand, you know, now you got coaches. I talked to friends of mine, how they had no vacation this year because they're recruiting all summer. They have got to get this calendar. I saw Mack Rhoades down at the Texas High School Coaches Association. Hey, he's had no summer. His staff has had. There's, and you know what? You eventually burn out. They've got to get that calendar back right where it's fair to everybody.
Phil, there's no question SMU has a donor base, alumni base that can write pretty much any check they want. They were on the edge of being perhaps a part of the Pac-12 along with San Diego State, and then that basically blows up. Now there's even thoughts that perhaps they might be in consideration or discussion, maybe with the ACC along with Cal and Stanford. What would that mean? How like thirsty are they to be a part of this? And aren't they someone who can write pretty much whatever exit fee check they need?
You know, they've got to be willing to do it. Yes and no. You know, when I was there, they didn't, you know, there's a reason why TCU's at and where SMU's at. And trust me, I don't have a problem saying this because I told everybody there. TCU had a plan, and they knew it was going to take money. We would, especially when I was there, with the academics being what they were, we were not willing to spend that money. You know, TCU said from the get-go, we're getting back to being back then a bowl team and in a conference. And they spent the money every way, recruiting, stadium, all the things. SMU, other than bits and pieces, you know, they felt like when I got there, they had built the stadium, and that was our debt service. And somebody has got to say, hey, now is the time. Now, it would be absolutely a home run if that could happen. If they were able to get in with Cal and with Stanford and SMU in that league, I would tell you it would be a home run. And I would hope Dr. Turner and some of the powers to be would jump all over that, because I truly believe it could save SMU football.
Which, with Colorado, with Dion, who's given them an oomph, they still got to go do it. And then obviously you mentioned Dillingham, and he made it clear, so did Jed Fish at Arizona, that they're going to Texas. They're going to go find and probably camp out in the state of Texas, and among the others, including Utah. And Whittingham's done an incredible job. Utah, someone described them as a ball of razor blades. They play football the way I remember. Yeah?
They're the Baylor of the Pac-12. When we were there, they evaluate their ass off. You've never heard of these kids. They recruit behind rocks. And then you play them, you go, who the hell is this? And they coach the dickens out of them. Listen, we were fortunate. We start when I went to Arizona State. We lost our quarterback the first couple of games. We lost some very close games, and we weren't. I didn't have the defense going yet. After the third or fourth game, we played Oregon. They were undefeated with Herbert, the quarterback. We got on a roll, and we played Oregon. We beat Oregon. We beat Washington. Then we went to Utah. They were undefeated, and we beat them. But let me tell you something. They didn't lose another game, and I told him after the game they were the best coached team I had seen in a long time. And their kids and the atmosphere. Another game. People say, it's West Coast football, but that atmosphere in Eccles Stadium is electrifying. I mean, there's not a seat there. There's an ass on every seat, and those Mormons are loud. so it compares to BYU.
Yeah.
I played at both of them.
So wait a minute. You had to play. Let me get this straight again. You played who in a row? You had to play Washington, Oregon, or Washington.
I'm not sure they were in a row.
Right.
But here's how we played them. Oregon was undefeated. We beat them. We played number 2. I believe Washington was number 2. I believe that was the next week. I believe we played them 3 in a row. We won all 3 of them.
Damn.
I can't, like I said, I'm old. I know they were close together, but I'm going to tell you the next thing. We had USC at home, and I remember Todd Graham making a statement. He goes, I'll tell you this. They had just lost to Notre Dame at Notre Dame in the rain. Sam Darnold was the quarterback. He said, we'll wear them out. And I said, don't say that. And we got beat.
Hey, a verbal commitment. We're wanting you again. I know you got things you have to do, but we would love to have you on when we can once the football season starts, as many times as we can.
Yeah, I'd like to. That's sort of going to be my life. That keeps me studying it and watching it. And like I said, I enjoy the sharing the thoughts of it.
We will have you on, and I will be in touch, and we'll work out the day and the time. Thank you, Coach, as always, for all of the reminiscing and also the insight from you being in some of these schools and what's happening with college football. The great Phil Bennett with us on 365 Sports. We appreciate his time. Ray's not a very good AD, doesn't have much of an athletic background. He mentioned he played. He said he's good people, Crow's good people, but then some of the decision-making or the commitment is perhaps problems in Tempe, Arizona. When we come back, Craig Smoak off the radar. Baylor Director of Athletics Mack Rhoades on all of what's happened in the last couple of weeks. This is 365 Sports. Texas Beef House in White House, Texas, just outside of Tyler. Why do people love their beef? Texas Beef House focuses its resources on developing the best Wagyu genetics, which produces high-quality beef. Their family has spent the past couple of decades improving the quality of the beef herd. Taste the difference with TexasBeefHouse.com. If you go at TexasBeefHouse.com and you place an order like retired stockbroker said he did, Paxton has, Kim Coulter, a big order, among others who have done it, you're going to go say, hey, Sikkim 360, say Sikkim 10. Sikkim 10, and you get a discount. because they are a part of what we do, and they want you to be a part of what they do. We will be giving away $100 gift cards to chat room members each week throughout the football season, thanks to Kim. Wagyu regular hamburger patties, jalapeno and cheese patties, Wagyu jalapeno and cheese summer sausage, Wagyu garlic links with cheese, Wagyu ground beef, Wagyu flat iron, filet, ribeye, New York strip, and of course, brisket. They are unbelievable at what they do, and they are building a powerhouse just outside of Tyler. Order what you need. Samantha, by the way, is the one you'll talk to, and she'll guide you through the order and help you understand how it will get to where you are, and it will get there quickly. The aged beef difference. It is just Wagyu, but aged Wagyu beef. Not typically available to the public because the added cost and the time. Texas Beef House, they age the entire beef and not just the choicest cuts of steak, resulting in an improved texture and flavor for all of their beef. TexasBeefHouse.com.
I hate my job, but I don't mind getting up in the morning. I dread each day, but I can't wait to get out of bed. You ask me why, and what I'll say to you is true. Well, you can get breakfast tacos at Rudy's Barbecue. Scrambled eggs and brisket, they ain't fooling around. Sausage wrap, son, they're the best in town. Barbecue for breakfast, yes, it's true. Put a smile on your morning at Rudy's Barbecue. Next in line.
Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jewelry, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Boozers, the wedding ring store and more.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive is a premier elite life-changing experience where you can change your mind, body, and soul. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness offers over 40 group exercise classes every week, including boot camp, indoor cycling, bar, silver sneakers, and more. If you haven't been to Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness lately, you're missing out on the improvements. New flooring in the weight room floor and locker rooms, new paint and mirrors added to the weight room and group exercise room, and many new machines have been added and arriving constantly on the weight room floor. New free weights, weight machines, TRX, rowing machines, stationary bikes, new treadmills, new ellipticals on the spacious weight room floor. Personal training with Christy London, Randall Corley, Alex Box, and welcome to Nathan Roach, where you will be encouraged and motivated to grow. A kids club included with your membership, plus sauna, whirlpool, and tanning bed. 16 tennis courts plus a beautiful stadium court, and longtime youth tennis pro Britt Coleman and assistant junior Kenna. Adult tennis lessons and clinics with Blake, and the commitment to pickleball with 8 courts and instructor Jody Thurman. Visit the website at wacotennis.com or visit us at Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness next to Hawaiian Falls on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
This is Craig Smoak's Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
All right, welcome into Off the Radar. Been a week or so since I've done one of these, and very interesting little grab bag here. That's what this segment is for those just joining us Tuesdays, Thursdays around 4:45. And there might be some interruptions here in the next few days because of Baylor practices and going and covering those. We'll see. But just take a look at some stories that are going on around sports. Some of that will include college football. Some of it won't. But I do feel like I need to at least make mention of one college football note here, and that's the fact that Greg Sankey has been talking apparently on with Feinbaum, and he got into some of the events of this past week. And I think that, I guess my biggest thing, and I said this earlier, is if you're the Big 12, you celebrate right now, and you celebrate for probably a little while. But as we'll talk about with Mack Rhoades here in the next few minutes, I think you also have to be as much on your P's and Q's as you ever have been before, right? I mean, you're not done fighting for your survival. And with the playoff starting anew next year, that's only a 2-year contract where you're going to have your automatic qualifiers. There's absolutely nothing really stopping the Big Ten and the SEC from flexing their muscles in a couple of years and demanding the lack of automatic qualifiers. And basically a scenario where you have a 12-team playoff and what, guys? Like 8 of them are from those 2 conferences, if not more. So Greg Sankey is talking about kind of everything that's going on, says CFP leaders have not yet met about re-examining the expanded playoff format, but does say that it would be wise for them to take a step back and reconsider what the format might look like given the changing circumstances, which of course has nothing to necessarily do with them. That could just be hey, is there an automatic bid still for the Pac? Like, how are we doing that? So he is in favor of them getting together sooner rather than later to re-examine the playoff model. On the future of the college football playoff, he said the expansion out west was about bringing in the Western football side of things. But now what we've seen is Western football going to other conferences. We do have changed circumstances that can create the thought in my mind that in others of some level of adjustment to be made. So they have not met, but he is pushing for them to move. And just a reminder for this 12-team playoff, 6 at-larges, 6 autos, which would be the highest-rated conference champions. And he says we have to acknowledge it is on everyone's mind pending the outcome of these membership movement pieces. Now, as far as the SEC himself goes, he does say that they are pretty much staying pat. I know there's the Florida State stuff and things like that out there, but there's a lot of mechanisms that would have to take place for that to be an actual fit. But as far as he says, we are in an enormously healthy place and not in the middle of the movement efforts. So there's just Greg Sankey talking a little bit about the playoff and about their role. And they played this so perfectly that you think they did nothing this entire time. Like, they weren't the ones that got the ball rolling. And look, their move made absolute sense. Yep. Regionally, it makes sense. Rivalry-wise, it makes sense. But they just get to sit back and just hands clean. And you know dang well they will be right in the middle of changing that playoff up and ensuring that, there's as much representation as all possible. But there is the SEC commissioner with some comments on what has taken place here recently on the Paul Feinbaum.
You know what they're
show.
like? They're like the guy that goes into a bar, gets a little bit drunk, starts a fight, everybody starts a brawl, and he falls down on the floor and falls asleep. How did all this happen? That's kind of what. But they're doing what they need to do. Everybody is. The Big Ten, the Big 12. Unfortunately, the Pac-12 tried. The ACC's now trying. But it's good to hear from him. And listen, he is the guy. He has the clout, even more than Petiti at the Big Ten because of tenure in where the SEC and what they've been winning.
Yeah, he did also say, sorry, Paul, but he did also say in regards to last week, we're in an enormously healthy place talking about the SEC, but he went on to say, just in regards to what all happened, it wasn't one of the great feelings to work in college sports. I take responsibility where we've made moves, but there was something different about last week. So that came as you were saying that. So he does sort of address that, which is nice. But he has played that role of like, we didn't do anything.
He threw grenades in the lap of Yormark, who then called him on it.
And you could take one of his comments as that as well. He said that they're not somebody that needs to be, and I don't think this is at Yormark, but you could take it that way. But he says the SEC, and this is true, doesn't need to be in 4 different time zones to be relevant, which is just really pumping up his own brand.
Well, the Big Ten's in 4 now, aren't they? Are they in 4?
Yeah, I think so.
Are they in the Mountain?
Are they? I don't think they're in the Mountain, actually.
No, they're in the West, Central, and East. Yeah.
Okay. So they're spread across the country. But, Paul, do you have anything? I mean, he's setting the table basically to revisit. I mean, what we thought was going to happen, they're going to reshuffle the deck chairs most likely.
He's always, moving. He's playing chess,
Absolutely.
He's playing chess, and the Pac-12 was playing Connect 4. I mean, that's how distant that is. He's always moving things around, and look, they can. The SEC can do nothing. They honestly can stay at 16. Nothing's going to hurt their brand. They don't have, and I mentioned this in the top 5 the other day. They don't have to go to 18 just because the Big Ten is. They don't. They're the ones who are winning the titles. They're the ones who, have the big brand name. They have all that. They don't have to. And he can say, look, we don't want to expand. But the minute that, and this is going to be true for anybody who Florida State might be interested in going to, and Clemson and whoever, the minute that their legal situation becomes clarified and that they can get out and become a benefit to somebody, then all of that changes, right? So all of that changes completely. And right now, what's he going to say? Like, we'd love to have Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, and Virginia. We'd love to have those 4. Bring them on. Oh, wait, legally, there's nothing they can do. So that's, again, tortious interference or whatever you want to say. So right now he's saying all those things, but, he can lay back and just wait.
Just wait. So they're not in a rush or planning to add anybody. This is not involving them, although because of all the moves, they do need to revisit the playoff, which would benefit them as much as anybody in the long run. They don't need the West Coast to be relevant on the West Coast because of the amount of brands they have. Certainly nothing he's saying is wrong there, but just interesting to hear one of the big power brokers in college football sort of talking about what's taking place and also saying, like, because all this is just going to benefit them, but also being able to go, I don't really like this. Isn't college sports. And I think that's probably how a lot of people are feeling. I think it's going to be interesting to hear what Mack Rhoades has to say, given that it's college sports, but he's also a part of the mix of pulling in teams. So a couple of other college notes. Georgia Tech has announced a naming rights deal for their field. Bobby Dodd Stadium will now be sponsored by Hyundai. It'll be Hyundai Field at Bobby Dodd Stadium instead of Bobby Dodd Stadium. It'll be Bobby Dodd Stadium at Hyundai Field, thanks to a naming rights agreement between Hyundai and Georgia Tech. It was announced by their Board of Regents today, and Hyundai will pay Georgia Tech about $55 million over 20 years for naming rights to the field. Originally known as Grant Field when it opened in 1913, got renamed to Bobby Dodd Stadium in honor of the former coach and AD back in 1988. So just another more money. We've heard, Mack talk about naming rights. If somebody were to go put their name on McLean Stadium, they would have a conversation with you, I can promise you. Elsewhere, Auburn and Toomer's Corner. The tradition is back. Auburn has announced that you will be able to roll the oak trees with toilet paper at Toomer's Corner for the first time in a long time. They had asked fans to stop doing that back in February 2017 because of worries about damages, and they had planted some new trees. Then, of course, that was all following the huge Harvey Updike incident with the poisoning at Toomer's Corner back in 2010. So since 2017, they've tried to maintain that area and did not want people out there rolling Toomer's Corner. But now, I guess the trees are healthy enough, and they've done all the work they needed to do, that that is coming back. So Hugh Freeze just in time, and I think he's going to win some big games. And I don't think it's going to be long till we see that that first rolling of Toomer's Corner once again. And I don't know about you guys, I thought it was a sad deal when that first whole Harvey Updike. I think that's really what put Feinbaum on the map as much as anything, honestly, was that story. But that's back. So we're losing a lot of tradition. But rolling Toomer's Corner, we're gaining that back thanks to some good folks planting trees and doing all that work that needed to be done.
Good deal. Plant more trees. Let's do that. No, but I think it's especially for
so
we can print 5,000 pages.
Smokey needs to kill them. You can't plant them. You can't kill them unless you plant them. But no, I hate it when if you're an alumnus and you're going back. And you want to, go back to Toomer's Corner, like that's gone, and it's gone because of one crazy jackass.
Yeah.
And, there was nothing they could do about it. When it happened, it was just like they're going to go away. So I'm glad that's back. There's a lot of things I'd like to see come back. I would love to see the A&M bonfire come back, which I'm sure there's a safer way to do that. Maybe now that they're going to play Texas again, they can figure out a way to do that. There are just a lot of things I'd love to see come back.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, there's a list you start to put together, and they had tried to plant trees or had planted trees in 2015. Those ended up getting burned. So hopefully Auburn fans get better care of these so this tradition can just stick around for a while. But bringing back the rolling of Toomer's Corner, and what a saga it's been ever since the Harvey Updike incident in 2010. Elsewhere, Just a couple of other notes because I know we got to get to Mack Rhoades. Tonight, Hard Knocks begins. Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. It took a while for the NFL to announce who was going to be on this series this summer, but because nobody really wanted to be. But eventually it was the Jets following that Aaron Rodgers move, making it a lot more appetizing. That will begin tonight at 9 p.m. Central Time on HBO and on the Max streaming service. And then episodes will air each Tuesday at around 9 p.m. Central Time. This finale will be in less than a month on September the 5th, just before the NFL season kicks off. And they were not originally interested. They did not want to be a part of it, but they were one of the 4 teams that were eligible. And, they ended up being the choice. And I think with Aaron Rodgers there and just all that's going on, that makes a lot of sense. So I've not been an avid watcher of it, but do you have any interest in this?
With Aaron Rodgers, yeah. I mean, because he's so odd and he's so he'll gain my attention.
How much access is he going to give them?
Yeah, probably not as much.
He
but
actually
even still,
sounds like he does, but he gives a lot of, obviously with Pat McAfee, he's done that, but I think he'll enjoy this.
He hates it, but he loves it. He likes to say he hates it, but he loves it. That's the thing that entertains me about him. It's probably annoying. Although, look, there's 3 things that are now Hard Knocks tonight, and now the Untold, the Johnny Football, and the Gators documentary, which I will watch. But believe me, when you guys will get the group text you'll get from me when I'm like, oh, look what Urban said.
Right, yeah.
I have this feeling, and I hope that I'm wrong, but I think I'm not going to be, that he's going to pretend like he was coaching a team full of, Mother Teresa's.
Yeah.
And I don't.
We'll see. We'll see what he has to say.
Yeah.
A couple more notes here. But
we'll see if they grill him enough for him to make.
That Gators doc will be really interesting, and the Manziel one will be too. But, Hard Knocks starting up tonight for those interested, Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. This is just more of a local note here, but hated to see former Texas Tech third baseman and current Rangers Rookie of the Year contender Josh Young having to have surgery after breaking his left thumb over the weekend. Win over the Marlins 6-0 was dampened by the fact that he got hurt, and he is a special player. So the hope is that he can return this season, but he's going to miss at least 6 weeks. So that is a huge bummer for the Rangers and former Texas Tech star Josh Young. And then I'll close it with this, a grab bag of stories, like I said, but you mentioned Pat McAfee, and there's been a lot of questions about how his new partnership with ESPN is going to work and all of that. Well, some of it's coming into focus here as today, and there's a lot to unpack from this story, but former Barstool Sports owner Dave Portnoy has apparently purchased Barstool Sports back from Penn Entertainment. Announced by Penn Entertainment today is divesting the company back to the original founder in Portnoy, who started the company up in 2003. But the real interesting part to this for sports fans out there, outside of your Barstool folks, is that Penn also announced that it was partnering with ESPN, and that will rebrand the existing sports books, where Penn will pay $1.5 billion to ESPN over 10 years, with roughly $500 million in additional warrants. So they've sold 100% of Barstool to Portnoy, and now in turn, Barstool is going to become the official gambling sponsor, stop, whatever, of ESPN. So Barstool back with Portnoy, Barstool gambling now the main, I guess, place to go to for ESPN. I think it's
now ESPN gambling. We're reading about this.
Change to ESPN
gambling.
Okay.
ESPN gambling, and Barstool will not be able to probably open a sports book.
Okay, so they'll all go under that umbrella.
Yeah, which means Portnoy got out for, sure, a ton. And some of this looks like he may have essentially got the company back without having to outlay dollars just to exchange some of these things. So it's wild what's going on. I tweeted this out. Smoak, you remember what Trey Wingo told us?
Yes.
Yeah, that ESPN used to say, hey, you can't give the line. You can't say that they're 2.5-point favorites because that's gambling. Now ESPN's in the bookie business.
Yeah,
yep, now they
absolutely.
are. So that will become ESPN Bet. I just saw that part of it. ESPN Bet, what was formerly known as Barstool Sportsbook, and that'll all be under the Worldwide Leaders umbrella. So they are diving fully into the gambling side of things with their own little outlet for it as the world continues to change, and there's a few things off the radar.
Thank you, Craig. Coming up, Baylor Director of Athletics Mack Rhoades, and this is 365 Sports. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it. Marco's Pizza with 5 locations in Waco, and just a few years ago there were none. It's the fastest growing pizza brand in the country and maybe one near you. You can go online, marcos.com, and find the various discounts or codes that allow you to get pizza at a certain price, at a better price if you order online. They will deliver. You can go pick up too. Marco's Pizza. Bob Mock, the owner. Pizza lovers get it.
Come shop the greatest selection in Central Texas and save big on Ram trucks during the Make This the Summer event at Allen Samuels in Waco. Get a 2023 Ram 1500 Lone Star Crew Cab, 20% off MSRP or 2.9% for 72 months. The choice is yours. Plus, if you're a first responder, you get an extra $500 bonus cash. We've got the inventory and we're making big deals. Hurry in today. They won't last long. Allen Samuels in Waco is the place to shop Ram trucks.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLean County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon wrap fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes. Cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links. Fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
It takes time to reach goals. It's a truth that applies to more than sports. It goes for your financial goals as well. You work hard for your money, and you deserve an investment strategy that lines up with your game plan. And Chuck Verno, your Edward Jones financial advisor, can help. If financial investments aren't putting forth the effort you desire, stop by today for a financial review. Chuck Verno, 720 North 64th Street in Waco, 254-732-1161. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Welcome back to 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Our weekly segment with Baylor Director of Athletics, Mack Rhoades, is brought to you by Edward Jones Investment Brokers, Ben Erlinson, Brad Wilson, Cam Heathcott, and Chuck Verno. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Baylor Director of Athletics, Mack Rhoades, who never gets to, and I mean this, probably ever enjoy more than a half a day or a day or two of vacation, and he didn't again, as he was a part of the negotiations with the 4 incoming schools, Colorado the week before, then last week we know Utah, Arizona, Arizona State. Mac, how much leeway or how much of a rope did Brett Yormark and the conference give you to talk to Utah and others that maybe weren't real sure what they wanted to do?
You know, Brett, Commissioner Yormark has been great to me. And, for whatever reasons, from the very beginning, we connected, and I'm grateful for, the trust and the opportunity that, he's given me to be part of it and to help. And so, I take it, obviously seriously, and, want what's best for the Big 12, and, what's best for the Big 12, is best for Baylor. And, I want Baylor to be positioned, in a really healthy conference at the highest level for years and years to come, well beyond when I'm done doing this. And so, he gave me a lot of leeway, and gave me the opportunity to be a part of it. So grateful for the opportunity. Grateful for him.
Mack, you're one of the schools, obviously Arizona, your alma mater, bringing it in. You know a lot about them culturally, fit wise. How do you think that they will kind of hit the ground running along with the others? I know there was some kicking and screaming a little bit because nobody wanted the Pac to go away on their end. But when the decision had to be made, do you feel like they have the runway to get going that you feel to be comfortable?
Yeah, I do. I think there's some truth to, some of the media reports where, Arizona was probably out front, ahead of the other three, and certainly behind, Colorado. But, I think from the very beginning, President Robbins really felt like and truly believed it that University of Arizona was a really good culture, culturally fit the Big 12, and so I think they'll be ready and enter seamlessly, and I appreciated all three institutions because they were loyal to the Pac-12 up to the very, very end. And I always say this and talk to this about with our young administrators, with your coaches, with your head coaches, you stay loyal to them and support them, 100%, everything you've got until the very moment that you can. And so, I appreciated their loyalty to the Pac-12, and you didn't ask this, but Friday certainly an exciting day for the Big 12, but I also thought it was a really sobering day for college athletics, and be really humble because that could be you, and 2 years ago it could have been Baylor. And or anybody else that was left out. And again, I've got great respect and admiration for Scott Barnes at Oregon State, Matt Chun at Washington State, Jim Knowlton at UC Berkeley, and Bernard Muir at Stanford. I know them all well, and I feel for them. They're in a really, really tough spot, and so I do hate it for them.
Mack, I mean, it's survival of the fittest, as you said. If it wasn't them, it could have been you guys just a couple of years ago. I don't think it was any secret in some form or fashion. It's been out in the media for like a year that these were schools that the Big 12, coveted and wanted to have in the fold. And, Colorado was one domino, but to have the other three drop last week, I know, like you said, it's bittersweet, but just knowing all of the work and all of the twists and turns in this thing, to know that the Big 12 is now welcoming in all four corner schools, what does that mean? What does that say? And how does that feel?
Yeah, it's Craig, it's surreal. When you're in the moment and, you're locked in and,
all of your energy is going toward that one goal, and you're trying to make it happen, right? I don't know that you necessarily handicap it, and you certainly don't give yourself much time to, what if this doesn't happen? But after you get it across the finish line, you're just like, wow, like that was somewhat unexpected to be able to get, all four, and, certainly, Colorado, began that process was the first domino, and I'll just say this publicly, gave me probably even more respect for, Rick George and the university administration. They made this decision without seeing any numbers and potential Pac-12 media partner deals, offers. They decided and raised their hand and said, hey, we just believe in the vision and where this was headed. And so give them a lot of certain respect, and they had a lot of courage to be the first, and but to be able to end up with four, and now when you think about where the Big 12's come from just 2 years ago, when Oklahoma and Texas decide to leave, and to think about it now that in a year, right, we're going to be at 16, and we'll be a really, really strong, Power 5 conference that I think has an even better future since last Friday. And so it's hard to believe that we've gotten here, and it's also cool to be part of.
Is the Big 12 done expanding anytime in the near future?
If I have anything to say about it, we are. I'm going on vacation. I think we'll always look at potential additions. I would just say probably the dollars in the media market right now, they're probably tapped out. I don't know in terms of expansion and adding additional teams to any of the conferences. It's been well chronicled, documented that this is, probably in the last 10 years, one of the toughest media markets that we're in. And, just don't know right now who steps up and puts more money towards revenue distribution, in a conference for TV, and, ESPN and Fox, certainly great partners, and grateful to them. But I just don't know that there's a lot of room right now for more expansion. And sure enough, the minute I say that, right, tomorrow there'll be breaking news. But I do think that's a reality in terms of where the market is.
So the incoming 4 schools are guaranteed a full share, correct?
Yeah, they will be, and they'll be a full share member. And again, as we think about future stuff, in the next probably 3 months, I probably need to reframe. There could be, I don't think, necessarily with the Big 12 when we think about, football members, but there could be elsewhere where it wouldn't be full share membership. But the 4 coming in, all 16 of us will be created equal in terms of conference, revenue distribution, and we certainly think that's the right model for us, and I know that was really important to all of our members, not just the 4 coming in, not just the 4 that we recently added, but even the original 8. Just we all think that's the best for us to have cohesion and unity moving forward.
So with the pro rata that ESPN had agreed to, Fox, that was not in their contract. Did they agree to the new 4 that they would do the pro rata on what they were already contributing? And is that how you got to the number, or is any of that money from Texas and Oklahoma in the exit fees?
Yeah, so, Fox, as you mentioned, wasn't contractually obligated. I'm going to be careful because I don't want to, share things that I'm not supposed to, but Fox did their part, and we, the 12 of us, came up with a formula that we were all very, very comfortable with, and made sense moving forward for a 16-member league.
Baylor Director of Athletics, Mack Rhoades, with us on 365 Sports.
Mack, with all this, Greg Sankey was just on Feinbaum, and of course I'm just reading that on Twitter about, that they need to relook at, how the playoff is selected with one of the Autonomy 5 conferences essentially going away and all these things. Is this the time that maybe everybody needs to get together and restructure the leadership of college football? Because this is getting really big, really fast, and everybody's kind of having to make reactionary decisions as opposed to proactive decisions.
Yeah, so, I certainly agree with Commissioner Sankey. I mean, the CFP, the commissioners are going to have to get together and figure this out right. And, so we don't know the future of the Pac-12 right now and what happens. And, it's is there a pathway, any pathway for them to, remain, Power 5 and, their share of the CFP. So that remains to be seen. You think about, what is it, the 6 highest seeds, does that need to be readjusted? And so, Paul, your question of, leadership of football, I think that's all on the table right now, to be talked about and certainly thought about. And, Bill Hancock, retiring and all of that. So you throw all of that into the mixing bowl, and I think it's all part of the conversation here in the very, very near future.
Mack, I just want to make sure that I heard you correctly for clarity when talking, because you know how things can spiral. But right now, not a lot of money out there in the media market for any potential, football type additions. But I thought you did say that down the line, a non-football thing, there's potential there that wouldn't include full membership. Did I hear that correctly?
Oh, I didn't. I don't think I said that's where we're headed.
No,
I certainly didn't back myself into a corner and eliminate that possibility. But we've talked about on this show the value of basketball and thinking about the future, and it's been talked about publicly. Do we ever get to a point in time where we bifurcate these contracts and shop football separately from men's basketball and or shop men's basketball separately from football and all of that? So, I want to be careful,
sure,
because I want to make sure that I'm being genuine and being real with you all. Do I expect that to happen? A basketball member or a half share. I just probably not right now, but I'm not going to say that it's impossible and that it couldn't happen.
Is everybody that's incoming among the 4, do you feel like they're all on the same page in a group of 12 that's now a part of the future Big 12? I know Texas OU for another year. Everyone seems to be kind of like joined at the hip. Are all 4 of the incoming schools, do you feel like they have that mentality?
I do. I mean, I think there's been some comments, if that's what you're alluding to, and probably documented maybe one school more than the other that seemed more reluctant or has maybe made some comments publicly, but just talking to those individuals, the athletic director, and the conversations with the president, right? I truly believe that they're all in, that they're excited. This is going to be a great new chapter for them. I think their fan bases are extremely excited. All four of those institutions. We'll see what happens with football scheduling and whether or not one particular school plays in Morgantown. It's first year in the conference. If I'm betting, probably they will, but who knows?
That's great. Do you think that the conference would have failed had they not added any of the four schools that are about to join you? Not fail, but would it have been a disappointment had you not expanded?
Yeah. So, I think, again, just being real candid is, we talked about it on the show, and I was always really careful to say that, hey, if we don't get, a Colorado, or we don't get a couple, or even all four, this is a great conference, and we added the right four, and we've got a bright future. And when I said all of those things, I absolutely believe every one of those things, and I still do. But if we wouldn't have been able to add a Colorado and then probably a second Power Five, I know personally, I'll speak on behalf of myself, I would have been extremely disappointed. In fact, the only way I wouldn't have been disappointed is if we wouldn't have gotten all four. Mm-hmm. And that's just me and my mentality. And, I don't want a piece of the cake. I want the whole cake. And again, we were, we were fortunate. The Big 12 was fortunate in terms of the way it turned out.
Mack, the Big Ten released their schedule for next year already, and now they have to go right back to the drawing board. Was there any intentionality in not doing that yet for what was going to be a 12-team league that is now a 16-team league, knowing that this was a possibility and you would just have to do all that work again?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly, we weren't counting on, increasing membership, but we weren't in a hurry to go and try to get that done with a 12-team model. Just knowing that, there was a possibility of adding the membership.
Mack, final thing for me. It seems like it would be a time to celebrate after all the hard work and the months and months and months that have been built into bringing these schools in. But because of all of the after effects and the aftershocks, whatever you want to call it, are you as a group as on your toes as ever, on your P's and Q's as ever before, and ensuring that there's not a comfortable letdown after accomplishing this latest goal?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think we're taking anything for granted. I think we're gonna, continue to be on our toes in an athletic stance, ready to move. We also felt like, and I alluded to it early, this wasn't a time to go spike the ball in the end zone, because there are, some folks that just are in a tough spot. But you always have to be moving forward, and if you're not, then you're moving backwards. There's no standing still, and so I think we all know that and recognize it. Do I feel better about the Big 12 and its long-term future? Absolutely. It's the best I've felt about it since, I've been at Baylor. But, again, we need to continue to build, this league, whether, it stays at 16 or someday, in the future it grows more. But we need to continue to build it into the very best conference it possibly can be.
So how quickly do you find a replacement perhaps for Utah, I guess, since you're supposed to play them here, not only this year, but you're supposed to play them next year? Oregon down the road, I don't know if that's affected by their move to the Big Ten, but do you now have to find a non-conference game for the second time the game at Utah?
Yeah, I already called Dave, and I joked about it. I'm going to petition that we could play an FCS because there's just no other Power Fives available. I think he liked it. I had a fan that was certainly congratulatory about adding the teams, but did have to mention that we've now ruined his trip to Salt Lake City in 2024.
Absolutely. Yeah, unless it's a conference game, I don't know. So with what Brett Yormark's done, the Big 12 has done, and all of the in-between, he has built up an amazing amount of equity. How much of that do you want to make sure he protects as decisions are made going forward?
All of it. I think, he's built up a tremendous amount of respect and I want to make sure that, not that he needs my help or he needs me to be worried about it or looking out for him. But, I do care tremendously about him and so, and he's a pro and he'll be very thoughtful and careful as we move forward, just like he's been throughout this entire process.
Mack, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. You juggling watching practice and also what's happened over the last couple of weeks, if not for a long, long time. We do appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. You have a great evening.
Mack Rhoades, Baylor Director of Athletics. One, the answer, I've been asked this many times, how did they get to 31-7 or whatever the 44, whatever the overall pie will be for everybody? Everybody will get a full share. We knew that. Where did it come from? ESPN's pro rata and Fox also did their job. It didn't have to. It was not in the contract. And that perhaps none of the money from Texas and Oklahoma, the exit fee, was used in any particular way, at least for those four. And everybody gets a full share starting next year.
Yeah, they can use that
next year.
That Texas owned you money to get a really sweet car.
Yeah.
Now that you have that, every financial decision seems to have worked out for them. And I do think, one of the things I've been thinking about is, with the all this going on and you have conferences wanting to expand and, if you're Fox and you say, okay, we're going to do this for the Big Ten, then the Big 12 is obviously going to call you up and go, well, what about us? I mean, can you do, we've already got ESPN on board. Can we make this happen? You've probably planned for that. And look, ESPN just made $2 billion today on sports betting. So maybe there's an upturn coming for them. Eventually, I'm of the camp that believes that that's eventually going to get, all of Disney's eventually going to get sold to somebody. But, we're going to have 5 companies in the entire world. But yeah, I think that they're maybe on the uptick now, at least a little bit, with that move and seeing where it goes. So yeah, there's money. They just got to figure out where to distribute it. And I'm not surprised that it actually happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot to unpack there. That's a half hour with him that I was just hoping he was going to keep his breath after a while. I know it's like hot as hell outside here in Texas right now. It's like 107 every day on average, but he delivered the goods. And, I mean, I thought it was interesting to get him to say on, any potential additions that, they're always looking, but the dollars in the media market right now are not, pointing them in the direction of, let's go add some more teams now. I think they're happy where they are. And, I circle back for clarification on the basketball thing because I know there's going to be a lot of what about Gonzaga and what about UConn and what about those schools. What did he say as far as men's basketball? Probably not right now, but not impossible. It doesn't sound like it's a goal at this moment, but that it's not something that he's ruling out entirely.
What did you do, Paul? What motion did you make when he made that comment when we were talking about are they done with expansion? Paul's over here acting as if he's dribbling a basketball.
Yeah, basketball.
But it was enough to where that is at least it's still something that is in the pool, so to speak, and that it's just a matter of time when they want to jump in with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be out there. I don't think that those brands are going anywhere necessarily. I mean, Gonzaga, it's hard to see where they'd have a fit unless there's this West Coast conference that comes to fruition somehow, but a lot of that will depend on the ACC, and, does the ACC go and scoop up schools like a UConn, for example? I mean, I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work, but, it doesn't sound like it's a goal right now. They just accomplished a huge one. They're not worried about, now we got to turn around and go get Gonzaga in basketball. I think that's just something that's going to naturally come along, I guess, if it does.
So the news, again, is that we knew everyone was getting the full shares. I've had a bunch of you ask me about how did they get to that point. ESPN pro rata, Fox chipped in even though it was not a part of the contract. Everybody, all 16 schools next year will get a full share, including the incoming 4, Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and also Colorado. There's a lot more I wanted to get to, but he's got to go, and we do too. Coming up next, Hall of Fame columnist John McLean, and this is 365 Sports. Don Humidor and Coffee Beans went by there today. Cheyenne was there, and I told you this story. Went to go see my brothers in Florida a couple of weeks ago. My oldest brother struggling, of course, with what he deals with prostate cancer and a lot of pain at times. So I took him a bag of gummies, and these were called for bad days. Cheyenne suggested it to me. I said, can I fly with this? Can I check this in my bags? Can I send this in the mail? She goes, you're good. So I did. I gave that to Robert, and it was the first morning he took it. He said he had not felt that well in a long time. He struggles, aches, and pains. You know the battle that he has to deal with if you've been through it before. So then, when I got back, he said he's had a bunch of great days in a row. So he takes a gummy every morning about 10 o'clock and has felt great. So I went by there today and bought 2 more bags of gummies. There's like 10 in each one to send that to him overnight so he can have that for the rest of the month and also into the future. That's what they have. Yes, when I first started going to Don Humidor, and by the way, it's a THC product. When I first started going there, and I still do to buy cigars, 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite names of cigars, including what is my favorite forever, Rocky Patel. It's Don Humidor and Coffee Beans in the Town West Shopping Center, Cheyenne, Carroll, and Ashley, just off of Richland Drive in Valley Mills in Waco.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help us finally hear. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why we take the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott in Conroe at 936-756-7717. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of healthcare while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. Sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance and there are no hidden costs. Even offering financing if that's needed, everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Welcome back to 365 Sports. It's time for our weekly segment with NFL Hall of Fame columnist John McLean. Brought to you by Pioneer Steel and Pipe, where customer service is their main focus, and best in metal, steel, and pipe for large or small projects, with 2 locations in Waco and Bryan. Family owned and operated since 1943. Read John's work at sportsradio610.com.
Hall of Fame columnist John McLean with us, 365 Sports. NFL training camps, of course, not far away from some preseason games. John, let's start with this. I know as a Baylor alum, you keep up with what's going on with college athletics, with Baylor, the Big 12. Your thoughts and what you've seen them do now by adding 4 new schools effective 2024?
As someone who grew up with the Southwest Conference in Waco, I hated to see Arkansas leave, hated to see A&M leave. Now I'm kind of immune to it because that's the way of the college football world. And by taking on Houston and Cincinnati, they made the best basketball conference in the country even tougher. Now they've added Arizona, which makes it even tougher. But I'm very excited about it. The fact they're going to have Utah, the 2-time defending Pac-12 champion, in there. You know, Arizona State hadn't done squat, which is ridiculous because they got a great school there, and they used to be good, and I hadn't paid that much of attention. If Deion wasn't at Colorado, nobody would know they played football. They've been so pathetic. And it just, when you bring in programs like that, including like BYU, which beat Baylor last season, I look at it from a Baylor angle first and foremost, and it's made it that much tougher. But the fact is, everybody's crying for the Pac-12. How much time do we actually spend paying attention to the Pac-12? Other than USC when they were really good, and maybe Oregon, I'm not really sure why. Maybe it's Phil, the uniform still night. I paid attention to them, but there just hasn't been a lot to get excited about until they're putting out players for the draft. And so I can't wait till they get in there. I can't wait till the Longhorns get into the SEC and start losing even more than they do in the Big 12. As I was telling a couple of Aggies at Texans practice, I said, you guys know that when you play the Longhorns and you're any other school in the conference, when you beat them, there's nothing like it. And now they better beat them fast because then not going to have that opportunity again. And so I think it's created, I feel bad for the schools that got left out. I do, but there's a reason for it. And I'm just glad that Bowlesby, who doesn't get any attention for this, but he's the one, I believe, that got U of H and Central Florida and Cincinnati and BYU. And now Yormark's taking it to a different level. I think he's done an outstanding job. Hope they're paying him enough money to keep him. Somebody else doesn't come in and steal him. But I can't wait. I'm fired up about this season, fired up about next season. And the one thing if any administrator, AD, coach, president, anybody brings up student athletes anymore, they should be tarred and feathered because they always talked about students need time to study. They don't care about that. The only thing they care about students is they grow up to have a lot of money to donate to the schools. And TV, of course, dictates everything. If TV wants to go to 2 super conferences with divisions like the NFL, then that's what's going to happen. And I'm just glad Baylor is a part of it.
John, you've covered sports for a long time, and I think the Pac-12 is the kind of perfect example of this, of where there is a lot of smart, successful people in a room that for some reason cannot make a good decision. Does it ever like, do you get surprised by it still, or is it one of those things like, yep, here we go again, a bunch of smart people with a bunch of money, but still somehow don't know their elbow from their you-know-what?
Yeah, the Enron people were the smartest people in the room, and look what happened to them in Enron. I've read everything that I can get my hands on online about the realignment of college football, especially with the Big 12 and the Pac-12 that I can't. And then I'm trying to keep up with the ACC and what's going over there. But the previous commissioner, Larry Scott, could not have done a worse job. You know, he had a chance. He tried to lure Oklahoma and Texas, and they looked like they might go. Then they changed their mind. Everything he believed in about getting a big money deal never came through. And the current guy, I felt bad for him because he went into a terrible, terrible situation. And history is going to show those two guys were the primary reasons behind the demise of the Pac-12. Unless 4 teams that survived bring in other schools, or they merged with the Mountain West and changed their name to the Pac-12, which I can't imagine Mountain West would do that. But every kind of mistake you could make, they've made. It reminds me, Paul, of the NFL. And you see these billionaires be so smart in business, and they're so impressive with every their companies, and then they come into the NFL and they're total idiots. And there's been plenty of them. The most recent, of course, Daniel Snyder.
John, how much interest do you have in Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets on Hard Knocks?
I'm really interested, Craig. I have seen every episode of every Hard Knocks. I've always been fascinated by it. As somebody who's covering the NFL now for my 47th year since I left Waco and the Tribune Herald, they take us places that I, covering a team, don't get to see. So I like to see it, and I'm really fascinated about the Jets, especially since the Jets didn't want them and fought them every step of the way. So I like that part. The only thing would have been better than the Jets that someday, if there's a God, Bill Belichick will have to be on Hard Knocks. And he will be the most interesting character of all, because the whole time will be so painful with him. The expression on his face will look like he's having a colonoscopy. But the Jets to me are the most fascinating team in the NFL. I just wish that 5th game against the Broncos was the first game.
John, what's going on with Javier Loya?
Javier Loya has been a minor partner of the Texans since 2002. He's done great in the business world. Now he has all kind of charges against him for rape and sexual assault from 4 different women. It turns out the Texans and found out when charges were filed in May of it happened in May of last year. I'm guessing around Kentucky Derby time. He's a big horse guy, has a mansion up there. And then it got out when somebody from Houston tipped off Mike Florio. And Mike, being an attorney, he knew how to find, lawsuits and all that. He broke the story. Now there's stories being broken here about
other issues he's had. The Texans, they didn't use the word suspended, but that's what the Texans and the NFL did. Minor partners don't do anything except show up and shake some hands, and they make money, of course, but they have no decision-making power at all. But it's a sorted situation, especially for a team that just went through everything they did. I told Cal McNair, the owner, today, I said, you guys remind me of of the whole Saturday Night Live skit with Rosanna, Dana, Gilbert, Radner. It's always something.
John, we talked about Hard Knocks. Are you interested in the Johnny Manziel documentary on Netflix?
Yeah. Now, one thing, Paul, is I need a loan because I'm the only person out there who doesn't have Netflix. And so if you could send me a check for whatever Netflix costs, I'm tempted to do it. And we only got a smart TV, a big one for Christmas. So I've subscribed to almost everything but Netflix. I spend way too much time watching TV when my wife's here. And fortunately, she's gone on a long vacation, so I don't watch it much. But man, oh man, if I get Netflix, I may never move in front of the TV. Right now, we eat in front of the TV. I don't type, although I got to admit, when I'm writing a column on Tank Dell, Texans rookie receiver from University of Houston, the Astros about to play the Orioles. I'm about to move in there and write while I'm watching the Astros.
Astros were right there, dead even, and now they've it's going to be all the way down to the wire. We know that, but it's up to 3 games now. With Texas has been able to get a pretty good light part of their schedule, and the Astros hammered up in New York, and so ought to be fun.
They were 2-2 with the Yankees. They were 1 out of 3 with the Rays. Now they've got 3 with the Orioles, and the Orioles got bigger problems based on the announcer. But
I heard he's back.
I think he's back on the air.
On
Friday at the Astros series. And I think even though the Rangers are starting to have injuries like the Astros had and finally were able to overcome them, I still think the Rangers will win the division.
Thank you, John. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, guys. Second Bears.
Hall of Famer John McLean with us, 365 Sports. Hey, tonight, 10:30, every weeknight at 10:30, 365 Sports. Thanks to Emery Winter with what he does, editing down what we do every day, right there at 10:30 every night on the CW. Coming up, Paul Catalina's Top 5.
Unite Private Networks is the reason you don't see us drop off the air anymore. And they are business internet. And let me just tell you the rundown that they gave me. Why UPN? Here's their core differences. Business-grade internet. They don't have residential customers, which means you're not sharing anything. You're on a protected fiber service. You're dedicated and symmetrical for upload and download. So that means your upload and download speeds are the same, which is not always the case. Your speed's up to 10 gigabytes per second, which is faster than you can even think about something. Multiple tier 1 connectivity for added diversity. So that's so many, you can have so many things going on in your office. And don't ask me to explain that any further because I'm not a scientist. Carrier grade equipment at customer premise. So you're getting the equipment that the carriers have, that they're giving you high grade stuff here. So many different things, battery backups, 100% fiber optic network, no last mile of copper. So everything you're getting is on fiber, and they've got 20 plus years of providing that service to area businesses. They're in a bunch of markets around the country. They're here, in Waco. That's why we got them. They've got white glove customer experience. If you do have a problem, which you won't have many of them, they've got it solved 20 minutes or less. That is not the case with a lot of other providers when you're sharing a network. I spent more time of my life that I will never get back on hold with our previous provider, and they might owe me like a vacation to Cabo or something because I wasted so much time with them. Check them out online, uniteprivatenetworks.com, or if you're here locally, call my friend Ace, 254-803-7070.
The future's bright. The time is now.
College is what you make it. It's a late night pizza run and all-nighters coding a new project. It's having big dreams and making them a reality. It's a professor who knows your name and your story. It's preparation for your future, your calling, your life. And at Baylor, it's even more. Baylor, where lights shine bright.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Where is the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House, unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu from our pasture to your plate at TexasBeefHouse.com. Samantha Duvall joins us. She's the marketing director who knows all of the specials and also the events coming up. And thank you very much, as always, for your time. So all of these holidays are over. We've hit the meat of, literally, of the summer. And your thoughts about as you hit the month of August and into football season, Samantha?
Football season's right around the corner, so that means it's perfect time for tailgating. The best time to grab our hamburger patties is right now through the end of July. We still have our sale going on with our regular patties and our jalapeno and cheese patties. They're $12 a package, so that's 4 patties to a package. It's perfect for the time for football. Gather all your family around. That way you can grill it up.
Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House, unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu and how they age it as well. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Top 5 realignment questions of the day. Because, again, there's just more and more that pop up. And we'll ride the wave until there's no wave to ride anymore. But number 5, do G5 schools really have a shot to move up now? Like, maybe SMU gets in the ACC. And we'll talk about the ACC in the very next one. But do they really have a shot to move up now? Or is this the beginning of the end of what their opportunity is?
I think that schools like Memphis and the likes of the Boise States, those schools are probably out for a good long while, if
unless
not ever.
There's a huge shift.
There would have to be some monumental things occur.
Unless the Pac-12 reaches out to,
right.
And
But then is that a power, that turns into the whole, is that a Power 5 or are you just going sideways basically? So, barring something monumental, it seems like those schools are out. But SMU, there's this whole little ACC thing now that's out there, and I've seen various degrees of reporting on that as far as like the way it sounds, is it close or is it like they're just talking? Like that's it. They might be a third wheel joining the Pac-12 schools in Cal and Stanford. But, I think SMU's got a shot. But for everybody else, it seems like it's going to be really hard to come up with a scenario where they get an invite. And I just saw where San Diego State, as a matter of fact, and I'm trying to know who exactly this was, if it was their AD or if it was the president, and now I can't find it. But they came out and refuted that CBS report on their intentions to start a new conference and trying to get into the A5 and all of that. There's a little Twitter thread by one of the San Diego State folks debunking, I guess, at least part of that article. So, I don't know. Regardless of that article, I think they're a long shot anyways. So, it seems like SMU are bust at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 4. can the ACC do anything to help itself? I mean, like, what can they, with the way they're locked in, with the way that, we'll see. Clemson has a board meeting tomorrow, and it may or may not have anything to do with realignment. We've seen these things happen. Florida State's attitude towards this has been well documented. But how does the ACC help itself? Do Stanford and Cal help it, or are they just, kind of paddling in a circle? Does SMU help the ACC? I mean, I don't think really. I mean, those three schools aren't going to get the money that's going to make the Clemson, Florida States, and UNCs. There were 7 schools that were in that all had this same feeling to one degree or another. Are they going to make those schools happy with those 3? Probably not. And, when it comes down to it, you're going to have volleyball players going from San Francisco to Miami. I mean, that is a haul. I've made that flight before. It sucks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it does. I've heard a lot about the student athletes, and I'm just wondering why people keep bringing them up, knowing full well the adults don't give a damn about the student athletes at this point. Like, I don't know why we're pretending that they still do. As far as worried about travel and all of that, I mean, I'm sure that there are some that just aren't the ones making decisions that absolutely do. But, I mean, the ACC positioning here looks like it would just be market grabs. Go grab the Bay Area, go grab Dallas, and I guess talk to the TV folks, and that would then lead them to giving you more money. And then if SMU, like it's being said, is offering up, hey, we won't even take anything really for like the first few years. We'll just pay our way into the Power 5 or Power 4 or whatever. Then I saw somebody mention, well, then I guess you just give all that extra money to Florida State, and then they're happy, and then everything's good. And so I don't know. Maybe that's the roundabout way to do it. I really have no clue, because on the surface, that doesn't really excite me, the addition of any of those 3. I mean, it would make sense. Hey, other sports would get way better. You get a couple of new markets, but yeah, the one part about Sankey talking earlier, one quote that I did see was he mentioned in regards to SEC expansion, they're not really interested if you're not bringing
pro rata, right?
Pro rata, and that even means FSU wouldn't fit the bill there. And look, I know it makes sense. Like, if you go get Florida State and Miami, like, that'd be cool. It sounds cool, but the SEC is about perfect right now. Like, it really is. It's about as perfect with Texas and Oklahoma being added as you could possibly get. It makes sense regionally. You can cut the map. It's all there together. You've got representation across basically every state that you care about. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that FSU threat, until we see something different, is nothing more. But I don't know that making the moves that they could potentially make, or a rumor to, really do that much either.
No, I don't think. Now, while if they have to add them, they will, or if they decide they're going to make more money, it's not about that. But I don't think that when the presidents and ADs and it's not just Florida. Like, everybody says, well, Florida's not going to want FSU and Miami. Yeah, they certainly wouldn't. Or Clemson, they're not going to want that. It's a whole swath of that conference not wanting to give 3 schools that have won national titles the same amount of money that they have.
Sure.
Like, that's not just, and then no offense to A&M, this is not A&M. This is kind of a different thing, because you're talking about a whole region of people that have kind of deep-seated ties, as opposed to you being mad at your old conference mate.
I mean, don't you, like, I know that, hey, go add Virginia, and it's like, at that point, you're just adding to add, and so, I know Garrett was shaking his head, but I think the conference is about perfect right now, once you add in Oklahoma and Texas. Yeah, I don't think you need to do anything. The money's going to be great and all of that.
Number 3, how long does the crazy travel last for Olympic sports? I'm going to be on this until they figure it out, because, again, you are talking about sending people, and if the ACC does what they're doing, that's as crazy as some of the other stuff. But if you've got to make that Berkeley to Syracuse, New York flight, I mean, that is rough. That's 5-6 hour flight. That is long on a commercial airline, and all those things that are going to have to go. It's not going to be so bad for the East schools going west, because they'll only have to do it some of the time. But when you're talking about a road schedule for every sport for Stanford and Cal, that would be all on the East Coast. The furthest west school that they're going to visit, if they do that, is freaking Louisville. That's not west of much. I mean, so there's all these things, and it will affect all the other conferences too. Because
did we ever say that about West Virginia? Even though
I think it all the time about West Virginia.
Further west.
I think that all the time about West Virginia.
That's what West Virginia thinks about all the time is how far away they are.
Yeah. That they're going to have
if they had a better option, they would have been in that better option a long time ago.
Yeah.
They're kind of stuck in the Big 12, to be perfectly honest. So, I think if obviously the Big 10 comes calling for anybody, they're going to move there. But, yeah, I think West Virginia's long been pining for a more natural connection, and Cincy's great. But they'd also love if Pittsburgh was around and, schools like that.
I just think it's weird that when the ACC had the opportunity to add them, which they obviously did when the Big East fell apart, that they didn't, especially considering that they added. I mean, they're rival, they've added over the years. Who are West Virginia's Big East rivals? Were Pitt and Miami, and they've added them all. Mm-hmm. They've brought them all in, and then West Virginia at the time was like, nah, we don't want West Virginia, and it would have made a lot more sense. Happy to have them in the Big 12 as someone who covers this league. They've been fun, but that. It still doesn't make sense to me, and they have to deal with that just like everybody else. Number 2. How does this affect, all this realignment affect bills in Congress? I don't think very much, because I don't think Congress has a grasp on it, but I do think that there's going to be a lot of pushback on, all right, so you are trying to protect the student athletes, right, with this NIL and all that, and they should. There should be bills protecting them, and, let's stop scammers all when we can. But if you're trying to restrict and all this, especially that Tuberville and Manchin bill that is very restrictive and transfer portal and all that, then how can you justify schools doing this? How can you as schools, you want this, you say, well, we need to protect the student athletes. All right, well, tell that Washington volleyball player who has to go to Rutgers and Madison before she walks back into a classroom in Seattle again that you really care about her well-being.
Yeah, I don't know how that overlaps or not, but I think, again, it's pretty proven. They're not really worried about that volleyball player.
But it does have to be part of the conversation.
Yeah, it's going to have to be part of the conversation, but I just think that ultimately leads to all right, well, we're not sponsoring volleyball anymore. Mm-hmm. And, I think that's probably the path you start to go down, because there are going to be tough questions like that. Or it just eventually you do it a couple of years and you realize this is stupid. Let's just do this for football and basketball, and then everything else is under different umbrellas. And I think that might be the direction that we eventually go.
Yeah. Which brings me to the next. Thank you, Craig, for the nice lead-in. Will college football ever have a leader?
You know who might be the leader if based on all the reaction I've seen to Sankey today, is a lot of people are saying, why doesn't he just take over? Because he's probably the voice right now that's the largest and the biggest and the most powerful in the room. I would love to see Mack Brown or someone like that. But again, I don't know that. They need somebody who has balls, that's not afraid to make a decision that's best for college football.
Yeah, well, that, thinks about it holistically as opposed to everything is an individual. It's all, it's ridiculous. It's like there's all this tribes that you have to come together with. And we as fans deserve for them to start thinking of it holistically, because
you're not talking about the NCAA with him. You're talking about as college football. Yeah,
college football. Yes,
like a czar, like we've heard. Yeah,
they need to look. It's grown big enough now that where you're having schools willing to fly cross country to play all their sports, the money is big enough now that it needs to be treated differently. It has to be treated differently. You cannot just keep going, well, this is the way that was. Yeah, you know what? When nobody cared and there wasn't, there were 4 TV channels and there was 1 game on a week, then, yeah, it was different. Things are different now. Things are very, very different. So,
yeah, it'd be great to have a leader and somebody just with one voice to talk about all these topics. I think he would fit the bill, Greg Sankey. I think, Mack Brown, those kind of figurehead guys are really that. I don't know, and I say that not knowing how fully involved Mack Brown is with legislation and things of that nature. So, maybe he'd be well equipped for it, but I think somebody like a Sankey who's already involved with all of the different machinations of, what it takes to run college athletics, especially big business college football, I think he'd be somebody that would be a great candidate, absolutely. And I don't know who else you'd throw into that mix, but he'd be right at the top of the list. But to answer the question, yeah, they absolutely do, and I think it's long overdue. But I don't know if you can get everybody to agree on that, because they're all so out for their own interests that who's going to cave and say, well, Sankey's an SEC guy. He's going to, and then that's just all it turns into again, and that's why you're kind of where you are to begin with.
All right, Paul, thank you very much. From Lorenzo Hayes at the bottom of the chat room just now, a true leader would have to stand up to the networks. That's not happening. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. Emery Winter, thanks to Jack McKenzie, also Garrett Ross and Levi Caraway for what they do. Our sponsors along the way. Appreciate all of you who are in the chat today, watching wherever you are, but not in the chat. Online, the app, thanks to Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Back tomorrow at 3 for Craig Smoak and Paul Catalina. I'm David Smoak. Thank you for watching, and good night.